Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the public meeting as well as the regular meeting of the Council of the Corporation of the Township of North Dundas, today being April 9th, 2025. I'm going to call the meeting to order, 4:30 p.m. The adoption of the agenda. Is there any changes? Would any members like to discuss an item in the consent agenda? Seeing none, moved by Councillor Lennox, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, that the agenda be adopted as presented. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest and nature thereof? Seeing none. We're going to step right into our public meetings. The first one is a public meeting for drainage. I do appreciate that Ms. Anderson asked about the sign-in sheet. I hope that everyone had an understanding of what was required. But at this meeting, there's no sign-in required, and this is pertaining to the Bilo, Moffat, Kennedy municipal drains, including East Justice, South Guy branches, and the Section 76 report. And good afternoon, Ms. Shade. So welcome. And if you could, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, and thank you to everyone for your attendance at the meeting to consider for the Bilo and Moffat Kennedy municipal drains, including the East Justice and South Guy branches. My name is Monica Shade, and I am a professional engineer with Shade Grouping. I was appointed by the municipality of North Dundas to prepare an engineer's report under Section 76 of the Drainage Act, which is an update to a schedule of assessment to allow for maintenance. My presentation will include, changing the slides, there we go, include an introduction on the purpose of this meeting to consider, a very brief history of the extensive drainage system, the reason this process was initiated, a summary of my engineer's report, and an overview of what the next steps would be in adopting the new report. So this meeting is to formally present the engineer's report and allow members of council as well as landowners an opportunity to provide input and ask questions before provisionally adopting the report. Following discussion, council will decide if the project should proceed or if there's any reason the report should be sent back for revisions. Assuming the decision is to proceed, the report is expected to be provisionally adopted by 2 readings of bylaw. The notification went out inviting you to attend this meeting included a link to where the engineer's report that is being presented could be found. The letter also offered landowners, for those who preferred a paper copy, that the township could provide this for you. The governing engineer's report for all of the affected drains under this process is from 1972 and was authored by W.J. Johnson. An update was made to an upstream section of the East Justice branch in 2013 by Eastern Engineering to realign and enclose part of the existing drainage channel. The approximate governing lengths of each of the various drainage channels, as well as their approximate contributing areas, are all noted on this slide, and details of the alignments were included within the engineer's report. To better understand the alignments of each drain and their corresponding contributing drainage areas, we've included a number of maps within the report. The East Justice branch drains into the Moffat Kennedy drain. The Moffat Kennedy drain and the South Guy branch both then drain into the Bilo drain. So we have 2 figures here to help better explain the various parts of the watershed. So the pink outline is the contributing drainage area to the Bilo drain. The blue line in the left figure on the bottom half is the Bilo drain. The start of the Bilo drain is near the intersection of Pemberton Road and Holmes Road. Then, also on the left figure, you'll see the East Justice branch is highlighted. It's at the top end of the watershed and starts just south of the Rito Auction property on County Road 31. The green hatching is the contributing drainage area of the East Justice branch. On the bottom left side of the left figure, hatched in red is the contributing drainage area for the South Guy branch, which starts in the middle of a farm field and runs parallel to Guy Road before outletting to the Bilo drain. On the right-hand side, we've highlighted the Moffat Kennedy drain. The contributing drainage area is then highlighted in red, and the drain is shown in blue. So this process was initiated by the township as the previous governing assessment schedule was out of date. The previous report also lacked clarity between the various drains, so it was challenging to interpret where the various drains started and ended. Maintenance is planned to be performed on the East Justice and Bilo drains later this year, and the updated assessment schedule is needed to assess out the maintenance costs associated with that work. This updated report allows for fair division of costs across all of those within the watershed, including lands that have been severed since the previous adopted report. Invitations to an on-site meeting were mailed to all of the landowners within the watershed by township staff, inviting them to attend a meeting on November 18th, 2024 at the Nelson LaPrade Center in Chesterville. Approximately 4 landowners attended the on-site meeting. No further correspondence from landowners has been brought forth following the on-site meeting to the best of our knowledge. At the on-site meeting, attendees shared feedback about drainage patterns on their land, had general inquiries about the process for the update, and specific questions about the pending maintenance. The township's drainage superintendent was present to answer questions about the upcoming maintenance works. Prior to the on-site meeting, Shade Group had conducted a visual assessment of the watershed boundary to field verify the approximate limits of the boundary. The final shown boundary was compiled using digitally available information, such as the Ontario Information Watershed Tool, and provincial LiDAR topographic data. This information was also compared against the original engineer's report, with field verification being the final step. No concerns were brought forth with respect to the inadequacy of the current design of the current open channel, whether that be with respect to erosion or capacity. With that, it was concluded that a Section 76 undertaking was adequate. No further improvements were required to the system in terms of design, and maintenance would be sufficient to ensure the continued operation of the drainage system. The scope of the work covered in the engineer's report was limited to updating the schedule of assessment to allow for fair billings of future maintenance costs. Separate assessment schedules have been prepared for the Moffat Kennedy, Bilo, South Guy, and East Justice drains. Assessment schedules were calculated using the factored area method. So the factored area method refers to 3 different categories for determining an assessment: the land use, distance from the drain, and location within the watershed. Land use factors were assigned based on aerial imagery, digital mapping, and other supporting documentation from the county-provided geographic information system. Lands used for commercial uses would be assigned a higher factor than lands used for farmland, while properties with provincially significant wetlands or managed forests would be assigned a lower factor than farmland. The offset factor considers whether lands are directly adjacent to the drain or further away. Lands that drain into a tributary or a roadside ditch on the outer boundary of the watershed would be assigned a lower factor than those lands who are directly beside the drain. Finally, the distance factor considers where in the watershed the lands are located and where those lands would be expected to drain into the applicable drainage channel. Lands at the upper limit of the watershed make use of the entire length of the drain to achieve their legal and sufficient outlet, and are therefore assigned a higher factor than those who are near the downstream limits of the drain. Properties were then assigned outlet or benefit liability. Outlet liability is assigned to all properties and is the cost associated with having a legal and sufficient outlet for runoff from those lands. Benefit liability is generally only assigned to those directly abutting the drain and assigns an additional assessment as the presence of the drain is seen as a financial benefit to those lands. The presence of the drain only on those lands would generally be considered to provide an increase in land value to those properties compared to the drain not being there. The summation of the outlet and benefit assessment is then used to determine the relative apportionment of costs assigned to each property, and the same relative apportionment ratio would be then assigned to future maintenance works. For the preparation of this report, we assumed an average maintenance costs of about $10 a meter. Actual costs may be higher or lower, generally lower, depending on the final scope of work and pricing received from contractors when the work is performed. A simple clean-out with minimal tree clearing would generally be cheaper than, say, a more complex project requiring significant tree clearing, brushing, or working through a swampland. Based on our review of the aerial imagery, the drains for this report are generally within accessible lands through open farmlands, with minimal anticipated obstructions. Ultimately, the scope of maintenance, however, will be determined by the drainage superintendent. So upon completion of my presentation, members of council and landowners will be given an opportunity to ask questions. Following the question and answer period, council will decide if the project should proceed or if the report should be sent back for edits or additions. Assuming the project proceeds and no changes are requested, the report would be provisionally adopted by 2 readings of bylaw. The bylaw would then be circulated to those within the watershed along with an invitation to the Court of Revision. So the Court of Revision is the first of 3 opportunities for appeals in this process. Each appeals body hears different types of appeals. The Court of Revision is held locally and allows landowners an opportunity to submit an appeal with respect to their assessment. Tribunal, if applicable, would hear appeals for technical aspects of the property or project, while the referee would hear appeals on legal aspects of the work. Tribunal hearings and referee hearings are only scheduled if needed, whereas a sitting of the Court of Revision is scheduled regardless of whether there are appeals or not. If you are thinking you would like to appeal, please ensure that the appropriate paperwork is submitted to the clerk within the appropriate timelines. Appeals for assessments must be submitted in writing no later than 10 days in advance of the first scheduled sitting of the Court of Revision. If you do have concerns or questions about the project that you wish to discuss privately, myself or the township's drainage superintendent are available to discuss and answer questions. As appeals can add significant cost to a project, we are always looking for ways to answer as many questions or concerns as we can before going down that route. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll pass it back to the mayor for any questions. If you do have specific questions about your property, such as how your assessment was calculated, I'm also happy to arrange for a private phone call.
Thank you, Ms. Shade. Thank you for the presentation. At this point, I'll open it up to questions from people in the audience. Questions or comments to the presentation? Seeing none from the audience. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand, sir. Yes, we'll have to stand. Your name, your address for the clerk to record, and then your question, comment. Your address on Baker, Kevin, please. Your civic address, please. Thank you.
Correct. So I do remember looking into your property, and we did pull, I believe it's the I want to call it the Somerville Brent Summer Baker drain that runs, that you're part of as well in terms of that watershed. So for your property, we looked at where the watershed boundary was from that other drain. I did not entirely agree with where the line had been drawn for the Summer Baker. In terms of looking at the available information I have today. So a lot of those reports are from the 60s and the 70s, and they didn't have access to the same topographic mapping that we have today. So as things are updated, the watersheds are corrected along the way. We ended up making some minor changes to the watershed boundary through your property after your concerns were brought up at the meeting to consider. But there is still the possibility that there will be minor overlaps between the Summer Baker and the Bilo drain until the Summer Baker is updated. So in an ideal world, you don't have overlapping watersheds, because really overlapping watersheds is suggesting that a drop of land or a drop of water lands here and somehow goes in 2 directions, which if we're looking purely at surface flow isn't possible. The reality is, though, that given they are older reports, there's going to be that possibility. We are working with the data we have today, which is current LiDAR information that tells us the slopes of the land and the topography. The only way to fix those overlapping watersheds is to continue with the updates of the reports as they go along. Correct. Yes, ideally. And in ones where we've worked, I think we are working on a couple that are kind of near each other, but in other municipalities where we have projects that are near each other, or other engineers have recently done verification of watersheds, we are collecting all of that information to verify there that you aren't ending up with those overlapping watersheds moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir. Your name and address for the clerk to record, please. I'm sorry, you have to speak louder for our clerk to catch you.
So the map shows two different things. It shows the water course itself. If the terminology you're seeing on the map is the watershed boundary, that is the catchment area. So think of it like the lip of your bathtub. That's the watershed boundary, is that outer lip of your bathtub. The drain itself is at the bottom of your bathtub. So it's that contributing land that all flows down towards the water course is what the contributing area is. So can you read me what the actual terms are? Yeah, yeah, so the pink line. Yeah, so the municipal drain boundary is that lip of your bathtub. That is all the lands that contribute water into the Bilo drain. The drain, that is all based on the land topography and the water that flows into the various drainage networks in that area. It is based on the available information, and it's, you're asking if the east Bilo drain is getting? Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, so that's a different water course. It would be out, it doesn't flow into. There may be another drain in here, but it doesn't flow into this. Not based on the LiDAR on top of that. There was a Henderson drain in that area, that's a whole other piece, but there's an extensive network of drains in this area, but they're not necessarily within this single catchment. But the Henderson drain has nothing to do with this project. But that's a different municipal drain then, if it's even a municipal drain. I have the old engineer's report that dictates what is and isn't adopted by bylaw for the project in question. Jamie? It's a separate project though.
Sir, it's been arranged that you will have an opportunity to have a discussion with Ms. Shade and Mr. Cheney, and we'll just move on to other questions. Thank you. Any other questions? Questions, comments from members of council? So, Seeing none, this concludes the drainage public meeting for this evening. Ms. Shade,
Thank
once again, thank you very much for your presentation. And we'll move into our second public meeting. Rezoning of 1715 County Road 1 and 10519 Kerrs Ridge Road, and Ms. Anderson, the junior planner from Development Services, will present. And again, a reminder, if you have any questions or comments pertaining to this part of this second public meeting, you need to have your name on the list. Is everyone's name on the list? Thank you. Ms. Anderson?
Perfect. Thank you very much, Mayor Fraser. Good evening, council, staff, and members of the public. Maybe. Oh. Did I do that? I did that. There we go. Sorry about that. So before we begin, just a reminder that only specified person, a public body, or registered owner, as defined under the Planning Act, may appeal a decision of council. So this public meeting will discuss the rezoning of two properties in Hallville. The first being the proposed rezoning of 1715 County Road 1 from residential first density to open space. And the second being the rezoning of 10519 Kerrs Ridge Road from open space to residential first density. So to give you a clearer sense of the location of these two properties from the get-go, we see this map here pulled up on the screen. Property A, being the larger parcel in the upper right, is identified as the 1715 County Road 1, now the Brian Telfer Community Park. And property B, the smaller in the lower left corner, is the 10519 Kerrs Ridge Road, formerly the Hallville Recreation Center and Outdoor Rink. Excuse me. Notice of public meeting was provided on March 20th, both by a sign on each respective property and by mailed notice to property owners within 120 meters of each respective area. Reinforcing the background on these two properties, the existing use of property A is the Brian Telfer Community Park, and that proposed use is proceeded to be unchanged. And property B is the former Hallville Recreation Center, and that proposed use is to change to a residential building lot to be potentially sold in future at the discretion of council. So some images here of the two properties. Again, both are located within the rural settlement area of Hallville. Property A is approximately 11.7 acres in size, and as depicted here on the bottom left, and noted again that the zoning for this property is presently residential first density and is proposed to be rezoned to open space. Property B in the lower right here is the 0.5 acre lot, presently zoned open space, to be rezoned to residential first density. So the purpose and effect of approval of rezoning for property A, the new Brian Telfer Community Park, to open space would be to better reflect the current use of the park as a park property. And the rezoning of property B, the former Hallville Recreation Center and Outdoor Rink, to residential first density would permit residential development on the property in order to list the property for sale, as it has been identified as surplus to municipal requirement. So the proposed rezoning aligns with the PPS as it supports an appropriate range and mix of housing options. It's an accommodation of recreation, parks, and open space uses that meet the long-term needs of a community, and that it's located within the settlement areas, and these shall be focused for growth and development in communities. The direction of the official plan also supports the proposed rezonings, as it identifies that parks and open space should be planned for to meet the recreation needs as communities grow and evolve, and that local municipalities are to encourage and prioritize development onto lands within existing settlement areas. So depicted here is the present zonings of the two properties. So property A on the left being that current residential zoning, and property B on the right being that current open space zoning. So we have not received any comments to date from ministries, public bodies, or members of the public. And with that, I will pass it back to you, Mayor Fraser, for any comments from the public.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson, for the presentation. At this point, questions, comments from member of the public. If you have a question or comment, your name and civic address for the clerk. Seeing none, questions, comments from members of council. Councillor Lennox, please.
Just one question about property B. Was it 0.5 acres?
Approximately, yes.
Okay, I'm going to redirect to Mr. Pohl. Although there is no mandated minimum for well and septic going to residential, it is generally accepted 0.9 acres. Is if someone does buy this, would there be an amendum allowing well and septic going into a 0.5 acre lot? All right, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions, comments from members of council? Seeing none, this concludes this public meeting for the Planning Department this evening. And now we'll move into the third public meeting, and it's a zoning amendment for 10641 Main Street, South Mountain. And once again, Ms. Anderson, our junior planner, is going to make the presentation.
Thank you very much, Mayor Fraser. So yes, on to the next public meeting for the zoning amendment for the applicant Jed Express Limited. Again, a reminder of who may appeal these applications. So the public meeting will discuss the rezoning of a property that is currently zoned general industrial zone to be rezoned to residential first density, exception 14, with a holding. So the subject lands as depicted here are legally described as Concession 2, part of Lot 8, former Township of Mountain, now the Township of North Dundas, County of Dundas, Part 1 on Reference Plan 8R-2204, and Part 1 on Reference Plan 8R-3842, municipally known as 10641 Main Street, South Mountain. So public consultation occurred on March 20th by sign posted on the property and mailed circulation, same as the previous application. The existing use of the subject property is vacant land, and it's located in the immediate vicinity of the South Mountain Fairgrounds as depicted here. The proposed use would be to rezone the subject property from the general industrial zone to residential first density, exception 14, with a holding, to permit up to a maximum of 6 dwelling units with provisions for parking to the east and west of the property. So additional details, the property is designated rural settlement area within South Mountain. It's zoned general industrial. The proposed zoning again would be residential first density, exception 14, with a holding, and the approximate area is 0.74 acres. The purpose and effect of the rezoning would be to rezone the property from general industrial to that first density exception 14 with a holding to permit up to a maximum of 6 dwelling units and parking. The removal of the holding would require sufficient professional evidence that the number of proposed dwelling units can be adequately serviced by private well and septic system, and setbacks would also be incorporated into the exception zone. So here is the draft proposal presently submitted by the applicant for the development of the property. The proposed development plan presently considers 5 townhouse-style dwelling units, each with garage and driveway parking spaces fronting onto Main Street or County Road 3. The septic is proposed to be located at the north of the property to the rear of the proposed dwellings, and there are provisions for additional parking to the east and west of the proposed structures. The proposal is considered to align with the PPS as it contributes to an appropriate range and mix of housing options in that community. It promotes new housing, which efficiently uses land, infrastructure, and public services and facilities, and supports the active use of transportation. And it aligns with settlement areas being the focus of growth and development within a community. It also is considered to be consistent with the direction of the official plan, as it supports that rural settlement areas shall be able to support low and medium density housing options in keeping with the character and scale of the area, and conforms with the municipality making provisions for a range of housing types and densities that are appropriate for meeting the housing needs of the community. This graphic again depicts the extent of the current zoning of the property being that general industrial. To date, no comments have been formally received by ministries, public bodies, or members of the public. I will note that staff are recommending placing a holding provision on the property until adequate provisions can be demonstrated for the development of the property, specifically relating to the servicing of the well and septic. And with that, I will pass it back to you, Mayor Fraser.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. So to that, questions, comments from members of the public. And once again, if If you have a question or comment, please state your name and address for the clerk to record. Yes, ma'am.
Chloe Preston, representing the Mountain Township Agricultural Society, and on the map as the Chestnut Fairgrounds. Our address is 2967 Low Road in South Mountain. I just wanted to say that, in general, the Mountain Township Agricultural Society supports the initiative by the applicant for the proposed use of the property. We would just like to note that as an adjacent property owner, we are subject to the land swap that is being proposed on the depicted map, and that as a commercial user of the property immediately north of the proposed property, we do operate a hall year-round that is booked nearly every weekend this year, and is booked nearly every weekend next year for events. And so our patrons have had the benefit of that vacant land for a number of years, and so we'll be working with the applicant to ensure that we don't have any compliance issues or damage done to the proposed septic structure, so that we can ensure that there's no liability issues. Our bigger concern is the impact that the development will have to the bylaw department in terms of noise complaints. We do have great relationships with our neighbors. As council is aware, Mountain Township Agricultural Society predates this township. This year we celebrate 133 years in this township. We are very proud. For one weekend every year, we take over the entire town of South Mountain and welcome 50,000 spectators to our very, very small geographic area. And as such, we are exempt under the current noise bylaw for our operations of the South Mountain Fair. However, the operations of the Ag Hall, which are immediately north of the subject property, are not exempt under the bylaw, and would be within a very close proximity to this proposed property and the residential units. So we would just like that noted for council's consideration, that as we go forward, we want to have good relationships with our neighbors. We do have neighbors that are within the same proximity of that distance, whether that be across the road on Low Road or kitty corner on Maple Street. So we do have relationships with our neighbors, and we like to think of ourselves as kind neighbors, but we do have a commercial operation there. We are a not-for-profit organization that has a mandate under the Agricultural and Horticultural Society Act that we do look to fulfill every year. And so it's important for us to recognize that we've predated a lot of the existence of residential properties in the area. We want to continue to have that positive relationship. So as we go through this exercise, we look to continue to have that with the applicant, and then we continue to have that going forward as Webster's look to utilize this.
Thank you for your comments. Any further comments from members of the public? I see the deputy mayor has one, so comments from members of council. Deputy mayor.
Yeah, Chloe, I do agree that that is an issue that we would have to try and resolve some way. I live down the road, a fair distance down the road, in a brick house with 4 panes of glass. And when ambush plays in the hall, I can hear the boom, boom in my house. And so, no, you're making a good point in that if you have a residence that close and they're not used to that, for this to go forward, we'd have to find some way to resolve the issue of a ban. I don't know if they could have an exemption on Saturday night till 1. I don't know, but we'd have to figure something out before this goes ahead.
Thank you for your comment. Further comments from members of council? I do appreciate your presentation, your comments, Chloe, and I hope that your comments are understood. You're the established, an important part of the community of North Dundas, important part of the former township of Mountain, and one of the anchor fairs in Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. It's the Ag Hall, the MTS Hall has always been a go-to spot for activities, functions, visitations, celebrations, musical events. It is a busy spot, and it is a well-respected place and well understood. So I do understand the deputy mayor's comments and the concerns But again, I think back to when I grew up in Chesterville, there's 2 doors between me and the train tracks and the crossing, and that's something you embrace. I can always brag that I live close to the tracks, and those in South Mount can brag that they live next to the Ag Hall. So, but it is a challenge, and I'm just wondering, has there been a lot of complaints from the homeowners that are there now that you're aware of? I don't need just anecdotally.
Not that we're aware of that go through the township. We try and manage them ourselves. We did have an incident last year with the amount of rain accumulation that we had, where we inadvertently had a spectator destroy the front yard of one of our neighbors to the south on the county road. We took it upon ourselves to fix that property, to restore it and reseed it. As it was an accident and there was significant water that could not be dealt with any other way, and so we managed that with the landowner ourselves.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. That's appreciated. Again, I just look at council. Nothing further. Thank you very much for your presentation and for your comment, I should say. And Ms. Anderson, thank you very much for the presentation. This concludes the public meeting session for tonight. And we're going to move right into the regular meeting of council, and we're going to step into delegations. And I'm going to ask Mr. Bill Smurl to come ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Deputy Mayor Teresa, and Councilors John and Matt and Gary and staff. I haven't presented since, are you hearing me okay? I haven't presented since November, so I have a fair amount of material. In the next 6 to 10 minutes, I'd like to go through it at breakneck speed and explain some of the stuff you have in front of you and try to answer any of your questions. So here we go. If you already have received my printout, and under number 1, it was mentioned that that the budget was approved. Each year, the budget is reviewed in November, and its draft budget is approved. It's sent out to all of the municipalities for input, and then the input comes in December, and in January, the budget is approved. There were no major changes, and the budget was approved, and I gave all of you copies of that budget back in December. So it basically is as is. Just quickly, the first attachment I have for you shows you how some of the money has been put together, and our budget's about $9 million for this year. And it also breaks down other sources and partners and who can help out. And I'm not going to go through the details. You've had a chance to glance. If you have other questions, I know you'll ask me. The 2025 SNCA levy schedule has been approved and is attached. And that's, I think, the 4th sheet that I attached for your information. And it's just important to note that about 76% of the budget, the levy, is for the city of Ottawa, and the other 23.5% is from all of the other municipalities, and there are 16 in total. And you see in that the assessment from last year and for this year for North Dundas. And underneath that, and this is an additional, there's a capital levy note, and that's going to be looked at with a special building that will be attached to the South Nation building lot. You know that North Stormont used to own a building in an old school in the middle of town. They bought a new school, have just moved into it, and South Nation for many years has rented and has a long-term lease to use the property for storage in the sheds. And they've decided that they'll have to replace the 2 portables that are pretty decrepit at this stage and build a new storage area at South Nation itself on the property. And so the capital assessment that I mentioned is attached and added to the other one as we move along. I mentioned in number 3 about George DeRuse, who was our past chair and has moved on, and they've changed the way we're going to have the executive. The executive has always been the past chair and the new chair and the vice chair. And because it was difficult rounding up and having past chairs in place all of the time, and because sometimes the past chair was from the same place as one of the other persons that was coming on, there was a decision made and the board voted on it and approved that from this time forward, and it was effective at our meeting in March, and we would have no past chair anymore. We would have a chair, a vice chair, and a second vice chair, with the ad lib that it could be that the second vice chair is the past chair, if that is what the wish is, but it wasn't the wish this year. So when we moved along, I noted the positions, and as I go through this, I'll tell you who the new executive is and was nominated. And it's on number 4, Steve Denshin, SDNG, Vice Chair, Adrian Wylands, Leeds Grenville, and second Vice Chair, Catherine Kitts from Ottawa. Was also a decision made that at no time should there be 2 representatives on the executive from the same municipality. This has happened a few times in the past, and I for one, felt it was very important to have that change so that you always have representation from 3 of the 4 areas. And so at the present, and for this year, it'll be SDNG, Leeds Grenville, and Ottawa. Prescott Russell doesn't have a member for this time. The annual report is attached, and I'd like to, in about, I don't know, maybe about 3.5 minutes, take you through it at breakneck speed. Wait till I find mine. Well, I don't have mine. And I may have, yes, I'll take that one if I could. Somebody stole mine between here and home. Anyway, as you look into this, this was approved at the March meeting and circulated. And I'm going to leaf you through it very quickly. On the message from the board chair is there, and the 24-year in review is attached. And that's kind of important to note that each of the municipalities, it notes where the acres of land are owned. And I'm not sure if you realize that when South Nation buys land or has land donated, they pay taxes to that municipality on that land. That has always been the case, and most people don't realize that. On the second page in Restoring the Riverbank at Oak Valley Pioneer Park, a lot of work was done there this year. On the next page in, you'll see a canoe filled with, weeds. It's water chestnut, European water chestnut, which is a very invasive species that takes over watercourses. The only way to get rid of it is actually pulling it by hand. And the South Nation was able to get grants for the last couple of years and for this year from the ministry that covered the cost of having workers pull those weeds and destroy them. If you flip over to the next page, it talks about the following summary includes the developmental applications reviewed in 24. And I'm not going to go through them with you, but you'll see that there's probably nearly 1,000 applications and dealt with by various parts of South Nation. Our main job, on the next page, it's number 11, is protecting people and property, floodplain and erosion mapping, and water response programs, and water control structures. If you go to the next 12 and 13, it talks about some of the program highlights and the most popular destinations. And it's amazing that you see the number of visitors to the area, and you see Cass Bridge last year had over 9,000 visitors. And you look at, the Oshman Forest isn't listed there, but that's another one that had around 7,000 or 8,000 visitors last year. Land partnerships, there's 9,000 acres of SNC property that's used by hunters, and 124 permits were issued. Some of the land is it's permitted to be used by people that have bees, and they give gifts of honey that South Nation uses to give to special events. And you'll see the trappers are there and the crop production. There is some property that is used and rented out to farmers for crop production besides some of the forested areas. The woodland management and tree planting on page, the next page, and it indicates that over the last year, 140,000 trees were planted. And over the last, since 1990s, there have been nearly 4.1 million trees planted by South Nation and the staff. And the 4 millionth and one tree was planted 2 years ago at South Nation. And are you aware and did you know that in the lot at South Nation, there's a tree for every one of the 16 municipalities? So here's homework for you. Sometime you're there, check to see what the North Dundas tree is. Education and outreach and fishing camps and various things are given and you're told about. The invasive species, it's covered again here, and the water chestnut is covered on this page 18. And lots of partnerships worked, and lots of money come in from these partnerships. On page 20, you see your board of directors, and the only change for 25 is George DeRue's no longer there, and the City of Ottawa will be appointing another person very shortly. The budget summary for 24 was over 13 million, and you heard me say that for this year, it's around 9 million. It's gone down a little. If you turn to the 22, you get a look at the area that is South Nation. And it runs from the Ottawa to the St. Lawrence. And obviously, the South Nation doesn't drain land that runs into the St. Lawrence or the Ottawa, but the municipalities along the St. Lawrence and along the Ottawa were interested enough in making sure that South Nation was assisting with the land that emptied into those two water bodies, Ottawa and the St. Lawrence, that they pay the charges to have every bit of the properties to the south, which is near the St. Lawrence, and to the north, which is the Ottawa, included in the South Nation watershed, and they believe that they get enough assistance from it that it's very worth their while. Now, I sneaked in a copy of the 23 Alice annual report. Some of you from time to time have asked and have known a little bit about Alice, and I'm on the Alice committee, as is Jackie Pemberton from this area. And so you just may be interested in looking and seeing what they do, but they do much of the same stuff as South Nation. They give dollars to farmers for holding land. Alice is alternate land use systems. And so it's used by various people and budgets and people like that. And good news is I found my book. And I'll put this one over here and get it back to you in a moment. Okay, if you go to, I've mentioned down number 6. I mentioned there's a very large watershed committee, and there used to be, and I think I mentioned this at a previous meeting, there used to be 4 standing committees. And now, they were duplicating and not all as active as they could have or should have been. And so they dissolved all of them in late 23, and they made one new water resource committee for the area, and it has a group of, and if you go to the last page, about 26 people on it, plus the 3 executive members are ex officio, so there can be as many as 29 plus staff. Now this committee meets 4 times a year, and when it was put together, I recommended that there be a board member that chair it for the first 3 years, and I made a motion that it be the vice chair. The vice chair declined and suggested I should do it. So I have been and am the chair for the next year till the end of our term, and then there will be a new committee put together. You see by the number of people here that it's a very wide-ranging committee that goes from basically Brockville to the south of Ottawa to very near the Quebec border. And it covers a whole lot of information. The the first year, we've had 5 meetings now. The first year of the committee has been an awfully lot of time bringing people up to speed, having information shared, and now they're getting to the stage where they're ready to offer some suggestions and offer direction as we move forward. And the only other thing I was going to say was the South Nation had their annual meeting, and from that, they pulled together a summary of events. And I'll just read you a couple of the items, and then I know you'll be interested in going to the website and getting the details, each and every one of you, for yourselves. But one of the things is they secured 275 acres of new conservation land through purchase and donation. And sometimes, if there's a tract of land that's close to other lands that South Nation has, they actually purchase it. But more often, somebody comes forward, example, the Oshman Forest, and wants to donate the land and have it in perpetuity in memory of someone. And so the other third option is some people make a donation and take a few dollars cash as well. So the 3 ways of getting that land, and the last year there was 275 acres added. And one of the things that helped that was the federal government put a few $1 million aside, and we always apply for grants. I think I've told you at an earlier meeting that our budget, the dollars we collect from municipalities only pays for less than 50% of the things we do. The staff looks for grants for the other 35 to 45%, and then there are a few services that are maintained, including septic, that brings in some dollars as well. So 275 acres last year and more acres going to be this year. They launched new strategies for conservation land and watershed management, and there had to be changes with the new act that came in a year and a half ago. They reviewed over 300 development applications, 165 permits, and 432 septic permits. Completed floodplain mapping along the South Nation, Castor, and the Bear Brook. They welcomed a record-breaking 250,000 visitors to the conservation areas last year, and we're pretty proud of that one. Planted over 140,000 trees, and there's all sorts of other things that you'll just be so interested in when you go to the website and see it. And thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chair. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, thank you for that presentation. And this, once again, let me say it's always important that we, excuse me, are able to have a better understanding of what South Nation Conservation Authority does for us in our area and across the watershed. I think back years ago, and I've repeated this, this will be a repeated comment. Early days for me, I felt unaware of what South Nation does, and as I do imagine a lot of people that don't actively participate or work with South Nation Conservation, that we're unaware, ignorant of what goes on. So your presentations always enlighten us, and the numbers that you use to describe what takes place, they're important to many people, I'm sure. So questions, comments from members of council. Councillor Lennox, followed by Deputy Mayor Bergeron.
With regards point 9, I remember chatting about it, but it kind of fell off the radar. I'm wondering if staff have any updates on it? Point 9.
Yeah, that was the one where that was my request last November. And it was to ask that basically each year I look for council support to get ready for the Remembrance Day in Morwood. And the OPP tells me it's the largest service in SDNG. And one of the things, we close the roads briefly. We have the fire department assist us by putting up barricades and stopping traffic for a wee bit. We send them around other roads, by the way. We don't just stop the traffic. And that we've been fairly successful in having it. But it does take a lot of work. And I know because of rule changes, there was a fairly major request form that had to be completed. And my request was that we have it approved that every year there would be assistance given in the usual way. It's basically the same thing every year.
Yeah, perfect. And for Mina, it's a great event to attend. This year was my first year attending the Morwood Remembrance Day, well put together. But I do remember speaking of this, and we all pledged we would follow up. It just fell off my radar, sorry. So maybe this is something we can look into.
I had it on mine.
Thank you, Councillor. Deputy Mayor.
I just wanted to say that I have actually personal experience with Alice, and I think it's great. And probably not many people know about this entity, but they came to my place. They go over my property. They've planted shrubs and trees along one of the drainage ditches to prevent erosion. This spring, they're going to be planting shrubs and trees along in the floodland, and they actually give you a choice. Well, they tell you what's preferable, plus you also have a choice in that of what to do. And it's of no charge to the landowner at all. They come and they plant the trees. So all you have to do is, tell them what you would like to do, and it's done at no charge.
And they will recommend what trees might be
Yes.
best for the area.
Yes.
And just for your information, you know that 50, 60 years ago, there were lots of trees planted. There were lots, I mean, blocks of trees planted. And many of them were white pine here, or red pine here. And there's a major study been done in the East, in the Maritimes, that says natural forests don't have just one type of tree. They have a variety. And so South Nation is now attempting, when they set up a forested area, to have a variety of trees put in so that it's more like a natural forest, and that's not just one or two things. And if I may throw in one other comment, on the weekend of March the 14th, you know that the biggest dam in the South Nation is the one in Chesterville. And on the weekend of the 14th, you'll remember how the temperatures went like this and everything melted quickly. And the staff worked all day Sunday from 7:30 till 7:30 and took out all the stop logs so that there wouldn't be a flood upstream and cause a serious problem. And it took them nearly 12 hours of work on that day, but they work whatever days are necessary. So I'm quite proud of what they do. Does it show?
It does, and well deserved. If there's nothing further from council, thank you, Mr. Smurl, once again. See you tomorrow morning.
Yes. 8 o'clock.
So we'll move on to our next delegation, and with us we have Carrie O'Neill from the chair of Art on the Waterfront Committee. Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay. So thank you for this opportunity to talk about art in the waterfront. I never get tired of talking about the event that takes place in the beginning of June annually, and we're going on 13 years. And it has a huge impact for Chesterville, and we are always looking for people that want to volunteer. Okay. So in response to our vendor feedback last year, we decided to go down to 1 day instead of 2 days. I'll go through the reasons why that it's such a great idea, but it is an experiment. We'll see how it goes. So Art in the Waterfront promotes and celebrates artistic growth for all ages, fostering creativity and economic benefits for North Dundas and beyond. Unlike typical fairs, we provide a gateway for artists both new and established to showcase and sell their work affordably. With vendor fees at just at $50 for a 10 by 10 space, we make the participation accessible while offering professional level promotion and social media exposure. We have 3 areas. Any of you have already been there. You know we have the kids zone, very, very popular. We have the music stage and drinks area that has all local bands. It's not bringing them in, it's all local bands. And then the vendor marketplace, which takes over the whole downtown of Chesterville. It's all free. Why it can be free is through our funding and sponsorship and grants. So we thank very much from the bottom of our hearts all of the local businesses that we go in, and I call them begging days. It's not very much fun, but we have some wonderful volunteers that go and talk to all the local businesses. And this year we're actually emailing ahead so they don't have to see our faces. You know, would you be willing to give? And they do every year. Very, very generous. So it's a community and business boost. We usually get about 4,000, and that's only a guess, 4,000 attendees that come through the town on that one weekend. Promotion and outreach. Traditionally, traditional media is most people not reading the paper, but we do use traditional media. We rely mostly on signage, social media, digital outreach to maximize attendance. That is the hard thing. Any of you guys that are running any events, you know it's really hard to get them to come. You know, get away from your TVs and come out. The Kids Zone is a really big draw for that. Volunteer shortage. So that's a little bit of a problem. You know, most of us are way up there. We're all retired people that are looking to help the community. We have got a couple new young people that have joined our committee, and thank goodness, you know, because they bring a fresh outlook and a fresh ability. Especially we have one young man who's from China, and he's our media person now, and he's just fantastic. So it's giving us a fresh new look on our social media, which is essential. Okay, year of experimentation. This year marks our attempt at the one-day format. It means the very same costs. Staging, that's our biggest expense, staging, musicians, security, refreshments, inflatables, it's all the same cost. But less time for the vendors to hit their sale goals. We're optimistic and we hope for sunshine, no wind, and no rain. Art in the Waterfront is more than an event, it's a cultural and economic driver for Chesterfield. And thank you for your support and keeping the arts alive.
Thank you, Carrie, and I appreciate seeing you here tonight. Although
Thank you.
last time we
Sorry
met,
about that.
it worked well for the two of us. But I open to questions, comments from members of council. Deputy Mayor Bergeron.
I know, I don't usually comment about water on the waterfront. But I see you have marked in bold, less time for vendors to hit sales goals. I'm an experienced vendor for many, many years, and I have to tell you that when people know that there's a certain time that the vendors are there, they plan to make it in that time. So I can't see that it's really going to hit, negatively on their sales just being there one day. Hopefully, it is sunshine and no wind and no rain. That's the important one.
Thank you. That's encouraging. It's like I said, we're a little bit nervous about it but it's the vendors that said in their survey, gee, we wish you were one day. And one of the benefits that's happening already is a lot of artists that we would meet peripherally at other shows. Oh, if only you were just one day, we would come out. And we are getting a higher caliber of artists this year because it is one day. Now, if we have terrible weather, it's going to be awful for them, but all I can do is pray, and I think it's going to work out. That's the big draw. We'll make less money on the bar. Oh, well, but we usually do manage from year to year with the donations, the grants. Thank you so much. Everything, it just keeps flowing year by year. So thanks.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Annable.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm council's rep on Art in the Waterfront Committee, and over the last 6-7 years, I've sat on a few boards, and you guys, like I said the other night, you're a well-oiled machine. Everybody's got a task, and everybody pulls their weight.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I love them all. They're, we all have our own personalities, but we do the best we can, and they have a big heart.
Yep.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, and I look forward to another successful year, albeit one day, but I'm sure it'll be successful nonetheless. Thank you. So at this point, we're going to move into, away from delegations, move into the Recreation and Culture Draft Strategic Plan. Ms. Mirberg is here, and Mr. Hack is here, and please come up. And the key information report on the Recreation and Culture Strategic Plan.
Good evening, members of council. As council is aware, the Recreation and Culture Department has been working with Sierra Planning and Management to undergo a strategic plan. Information has been gathered from council, our team, and the community using a variety of methods over the past 6 months. Here with us today is Mr. John Hack, the Director of Sierra. He will be presenting the Recreation and Culture Strategic Plan key directions and recommendations. Council is requested to provide feedback and direction during this meeting so that the strategic plan document can be finalized and presented to council for adoption during the May council meeting.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council, members of staff and the public. It's great that we can come and provide you with a lot of detail, and it really is a lot of detail. So I'm not sure whether council's had a chance to go through the materials in package. I think, yeah, this was. But it's still. But this is the opportunity for us to really go through the recommendations and get these out in a public forum. And then the plan is to come back with the actual written document that becomes a policy that, if council's minded to, would be adopted, and that becomes the recreation master plan for the next 10 years. So it skips various council cycles, and so it has to be something that sort of is tested against public input on it. So what I'll do is, let's just see if I can get this working firstly. Yes, great. So I'm going to go through, and I'll try and be as crisp as I can, but there is quite a bit of detail. We'll focus on the sort of top items, but we're going to go through, as I said, guiding principles. In actual fact, it's just one slide, but it's actually the most important thing, because as we know, when you get into implementing something that is multi-million dollars in nature over a period of 5 to 10 years, it's not easy to do. So you have to rest on the process that you bring and the principles that you bring to bear to undertake any decisions about facilities that either get developed, get decommissioned, or which would be subject to members of the public coming forward and wanting partnerships with the municipality. It could be a cricket pitch, could be something else, something that you haven't really thought about, haven't had to, but these principles are there to be able to guide council in decisions about what your role is in all of this. And then, so we'll get into the key directions as well. So the recent engagement, we've had a survey that was done earlier in the process. We've had other meetings. We had a public meeting in the fall. The most recent was a meeting on March 3, where we had about 35 or 40 people come out. It was quite good, and members of council were there. We were able to socialize what we're really doing in the plan, and I think it was well received, and we got some good comments. We then posted it online, and we got a very strong response. So sorry, I see that note there, analysis. I think that's a message for me. We got about 350 responses. And so we're still running through the process of doing that. So we had about 35, people come out. We had 10 times that respond online to the same series of boards. So kudos to members of the public for being active and getting engaged. So when we come back with the plan, you'll get some of that. I don't think anything changes conclusions, but it was a good show of interest. So the principles that I spoke of, the top 3, I think, are critical. In any of these processes, Megan and you as members of council walk into a situation where you've got some facilities that are in better shape than others. There's a whole legacy and history to how recreation is provided. In terms of pre-amalgamation, there's a lot of expectations. One of the things we knew straight off the bat was that people were concerned about what happens to facilities in Chesterville versus what happens to the facilities in Winchester, and then how you take care of the other hamlets that make up the municipality. So these principles, I think, should hopefully put any concern that there is on that to rest. And so straight in at the second one there, adopt a two hubs approach to recreation. And these principles are all interlaced with one another, because why are two hubs useful? Well, because you have two hubs and because you have a sizable amount of investment already maintained in both of them. Now, in certain cases, you're going to evolve out of a two hub approach. You can't build, if the next iteration was to build two new gymnasiums, you're not going to build one in Chesterville and one in Winchester, right? You're going to do something in a one municipal approach to it. But as it stands, principle one, recognize the importance of the assets that you have, take care of what you have. So asset management, putting the money aside to be able to invest, keep it in good repair. It follows right the way through the administration, right down to the hires that you have to maintain the facilities and the subcontracts that you do. It's all important. And so that then leads to three, which is a proactive planning for recreation facilities. I'll come on to that. This plan should be forward-thinking. There should be some excitement in the details of it when you read it. And so that's what we're striving for. Outdoor amenities, very important to maintain. The fifth one, appropriate levels of subsidization. So we routinely call for having a focus on what it costs for recreation, not because we are, trying to promote some sort of fiduciary tightness of wallet or anything like that, nothing of the sort. What it does is, going through that process, you establish what's important to you in terms of what your budgets, where your subsidies are, where you think you can change things. So that then feeds really to the sixth one, which is service delivery and partnerships. You are not an island unto yourself. There are partnerships. We had the gentleman from the conservation area just here talking about the things which are relevant to that organization, and that relates to the things that you're doing as well. Access to the water being just one of them. Okay, so on to the arenas question. Just to go through very, very sort of quickly, we look at things from the point of view of provision standards, in part because you were a municipality that is amalgamated from previous townships. You tend to have, a level of independence of those former municipalities, and that's the case. You've got two arenas for a population of less than 6,000. So you have a very, very high level of service. It is not atypical. It is typical where you see, when Mike Harris did the amalgamations, you suddenly got municipalities that had a lot of these assets. And so a lot of this is about just recognizing the importance of both facilities. And just to look at the utilization, the Winchester Arena at 94%, Chesterville at 86%. That's prime time. So that's this evening, through to 11 o'clock. It's the weekends, Saturdays, Sundays, very, very busy. These facilities are going to be used by residents of the municipality, but they're going to be used by residents from elsewhere as well. So you could be an elite hockey player coming up from Cornwall, wherever. I'm sure if we looked into those details, you're going to see very much a regional pattern. So these two facilities are important. If you were to lose one of them, it would certainly throw the demand-supply equation for ice off kilter significantly. So there is no proposition in the plan here to save money and close one of the arenas. They both need to stay open. I'll get into some of the other details shortly. Without getting into, I think council is fully aware of some of the condition issues because you've sanctioned some applications to try and resolve some of the issues. But in terms of the capital, it's not inexpensive, and we don't look at 2030 to 2051. We're just looking over the next sort of five years. It's a fair amount of money that you would have to spend to do everything perfectly. Obviously, in terms of what you spend and when you spend, you have a degree of control over that. So this isn't just what you have to spend, but it's what is being recommended. But it speaks to the issue that you need to maintain. Accessibility is always an important measure. That's good. And in terms of operating financials, the cost recovery is not bad. Not bad. You see actually a number of places with cost recovery which is much lower than this. So almost 50% overall for the Winchester Arena, and getting on for the rural, Chesterfield and District Arena. So, and those metrics, as I mentioned when I first walked into the buildings, because we'd heard the proposition was maybe we have a new arena. You can see that these two buildings operate well in terms of how they're approached, how they're managed, and you can see that in the numbers. So what do we hear from the public? Well, we asked them some straight up questions. Do you think the township should plan for the future of the arenas in terms of replacement of one or both? And you had 55% as a clear majority that said yes. In terms of your preference regarding future planning for arena replacement, this is again, it's a third of people, so it tends to be split. Single pad in both villages as replacements for 27% of people. That's what people said. That's what will not happen. And even if you hired another consultant 5-10 years down the road on this, that is not going to be the proposition. What it would be a determination of how many rinks you need, because you're looking at what other rinks are being built around as well. And then from that, you try and bring them in under one roof if you could. So a twin pad. But in the short term, because that is sort of over the horizon, not quite, but it's an aspiration part of the plan. In the immediate and medium term, the issue is maintain and improve, and that's what we see there from the public. So the recommendations, just to get to it on the arenas, are to, I'll just read this so there's absolute clarity, to continue to operate the two arenas and invest in the capital as required over the life of the plan. So the plan's about 10 years in length, unless something changes to require you to update it well before that time. But this is the sort of the soft part, the nuance of this plan that we really want to convey to council. Now is the time in this plan to recognize that you do need a new arena. Both arenas are going to come to the end of their life, if not not during the plan, but at some point beyond. Those communities that get those arenas built and do so in a way which doesn't put undue stress on their finances are arenas that have a plan in place, process. So obviously, a lot of people talk about the new facility that's under construction in Embrun. We did the plan, 10 years ago, and 10 years ago, if we'd said close Russell Arena and the Palais des Sports, we'd have been, we were criticized for it. But what we knew we wanted to do was convey that you have to start to make the change. So that became the thought process, and it took a decade to do. And I'm not suggesting that it's easy by any means, but I think it's important that we put out here in the recommendations an acknowledgement of needing to replace that facility means that the planning for it should happen pretty much from now on. At the same time, you're investing in your existing facilities to maintain them. So you try and avoid throwaway capital. So you're not going to spend $10 million in an arena, but you're going to do what you need to maintain the quality of the experience as you can over a period, while at the same time moving on that, as I said, the aspiration to have a new facility built. There are some other things that are, to that end about sort of good quality capital projects in the short term, and those will be in the details. So just moving on to the community centers, again, we look at it from a geographic lens. They're spread, they're helpful, they're useful. In terms of the quality, and the usefulness of the spaces, we can discuss that. But in terms of utilization, so avoiding the pandemic years, those are the numbers there. 18% for Chesterfield Hall, 32%, 28%, 27% for Nelson La Prade, and then some of the more, the small hamlet facility there in South Mountain, 5%, We've put a little bit of flavor on those commentaries. Utilization it's going to be much lower than an arena, right? So that's sort of a standard fare. You're not going to expect it to be high. So we don't make any decisions in terms of our recommendations based on one metric. We look at a number of different things as well. So that's the key aspect there. And I say that because one of the groups that uses Chesterville Hall was quite adamant at the public meeting that utilization was higher than the 18%, and whether it is or isn't is less the point. It's not going to be, that is not the trigger of whether you maintain a facility. It's one of the measures. We don't expect it to be particularly high. So on the condition, the Chesterville Community Hall is the one that has the poorest condition, and with the amount of expenditure over the next 5 years being an order of magnitude higher, again, if the decision is made to actually invest in that facility, because the council always has the choice. In terms of cost recovery for operations, really there's no issue on any of these facilities because the numbers are so small, and again, that's typical. So it really is a question of what's the value of these facilities to the individual communities, and we do take that very seriously. You'll see from our recommendations, we're not talking about saying build a new arena and put a single large community center in there and everyone has to drive into Winchester for that. That's not the point here, and we'll get into that in the recommendations. So as it relates to some of the more what I'll call, I know people here wouldn't call it remote, but the ones which are further from the madding crowd in Winchester, down in South Mountain, the resource room there, maintain it. As it relates to Morwood Community Center, that really is a hub of activity there in terms of what's in that building, the outdoor playground and field, and the outdoor arena. So that's one to maintain and improve as well. We do think the utilization and the governance of that facility could be subject to some further consideration. And then other recommendations that get very specific to the halls. As it relates to the community hall for Chesterville, so just as a backdrop to that, when I drove in and several times to have a look at that facility, the one thing you notice straight away is its prominence, right, in terms of it being on the water across from where the public space is. It's next to the Heritage Center. There's a really sort of almost like a European quadrangle feel to there, or could be. And there's some properties in need. There's a hotel next to the Heritage Center that needs some TLC. And I know that the municipality has looked at alternative uses for that facility over a number of years. So it is not a simple plan to say this one could be decommissioned. And what we always do in the work that we do is that never works unless you have a value proposition for what you do with offering better space as a result of that. So we have some recommendations in that regard. But that is the one facility that could, given the amount of cost that is being contemplated, could, if council had a view to it, to be decommissioned. Now, what would it be decommissioned for? It's a very prominent site. So if I put my real estate advisory hat on, I would be saying you'd have to work through an RFP process to very clearly understand what's going to be built on that site or in that building so that there's a success. What you don't want is a vacant building at that location. In terms of uses that would be, if you were to move to go down that path, in terms of finding new space for the existing users, such as the dance group that use it, this is about using we think it's because of the costs involved in building new, it's more a case of finding space and allocation that works to house those groups that would be displaced from that facility. I'll leave it at that because I want to talk about the whole issue of whether or not you build a gymnasium at this time or not. Now, gymnasium would certainly meet the need, but we eventually decided against that as a recommendation, and I'll explain that. The Heritage Centre is one, and the Old Town Hall. The Old Town Hall is a pretty iconic building. There are changes. There are ways it can be improved, and we can get into the details of that. And cost recovery is not an issue there. So what we heard from people in terms of the improving the Old Town Hall, there are a number of things: lobby, seating, theatre production. Our view is that I think it needs to be used, and the stewardship of it needs a little bit more precision in terms of the skills that are required to operate the theatre. That's not easy to do, but I know Megan's, we've been talking about that, and I think that'll be one of the more detailed recommendations that we get to. So as it relates to the cultural facilities then, so for the Heritage Centre, I think rather than sort of make significant changes, it is one about finding what the mandate is. My understanding is it's open only a couple of days in the summer for use. And so the question is, what should be the mandate of that facility as a visitor services and Heritage Centre? Should it be more of accommodating community groups, school groups, so on and so forth? And what resources need to be put into it? There were plans to, could we possibly expand the building or even purchase the hotel site next door? I don't think those are things which the master plan should be contemplating. It's really a case of what is the value of that particular building and the operation and the volunteerism that goes into it as well. And then the Old Town Hall, as I said, that's a keeper. It's quite iconic. There aren't many of these buildings and these kinds of theatre productions, and I think there's a lot of energy and interest to make that a really useful space. So that one will be part of our recommendations. Okay, Chesterville is a recreation hub. In the red there, if you can see it, is the park with the pool, with the play equipment, with the tennis and pickleball, and the Nelson LaPlade Center. So it's very functional in the sense that there's a lot going on there, but I think what we're saying is that Chesterville needs to be invested as a hub. So there needs to be some money spent in improving the location. We think there should be 2 outdoor pools. I don't think the costs involved to maintain those pools are of an order of magnitude that you just say we need to just have one. I think you have one. There is some improvements that need to be made. I know the YMCA, I think, is now under contract. And so there are things certainly to improve that site that can be undertaken. So look for those more detailed recommendations on that front. Winchester is a recreation hub. This is where I wanted to speak just briefly about gymnasia. This is a really great, it's a great site. And you've got, the fully functioning arena and community center, and then the outdoor spaces. And then you have land to the rear, in fact, of the Toboggan Hill and the baseball diamond. So this is one where there's a lot that should happen in the future. And it is a potential location for twinning a facility, but we're not sure it would be twinning by latching on to the existing arena. We looked at this, and given what people have said, they'd like a sports dome. And obviously there are sports domes around the Ottawa area. You see them. They're very useful. They are expensive. They're, $6 to $8 million if you were to do it. It's a major project, as would be a gymnasium if you were to have a fixed wall, fixed roof facility. But given that what we think should happen is to maintain these sites, but essentially start to build the business case and the reserves and the applications and the commitment within the community to move to a new multi-use recreation complex that, let's just say it for argument's sake, because you'd need to do the study on it, a twin pad arena plus a gymnasium. It's an expensive proposition. A single pad and a gymnasium would be 35 to 40 million if you were to do that. So there needs to be planning for it. So although people want fitness center, walking track, sports dome, I think those requirements and interests of people should be channeled into a broader plan for this as being the location to where you would invest in a new facility, which would include ice as well. And then recognize that if you do, that space at the back that you have, there is opportunity to bring home, if you will, some of the soccer and other rectangular field uses that you have, because you don't have much in that way elsewhere in the municipality. Outdoor pools, I won't go into too much detail, but there's a lot of satisfaction with them, and I think that's the key here. The NOIs, 67,000, 89,000. People like an indoor pool. An indoor pool would be 10 times that in terms of the deficit. So we're going to be making that. There's a lot of pools being built and access within the Ottawa area and the rural area around. But these two pools, they do function, and I think they're important to maintain. So for anyone in the community that was concerned, we were sort of looking at Chesterville in particular in terms of a closure. It's not a closure proposition from what we can see. So the key recommendations there just lay out on the pools. And I'll just focus on the last one in the interest of time. The Howellville Park build-out, which is undergoing. That's a really quite exciting plan, reflects strong residential growth in the area. The township should adopt a policy of future park amenities, including splash pads, in response to identified localized demands. So although we're saying Winchester and Chesterville need to be maintained as those hubs, particularly for the pools, we're not saying that it makes sense to then put a splash pad next to it because you have the system in place. Put it where there is a localized opportunity, so you are spreading the benefit across the municipality. Ball diamonds, very quickly, 4 ball diamonds, municipally speaking, and then 2 additional within the school. A good level of satisfaction. So that really reflects the fact that people they appreciate what is done in terms of bringing these fields on in the spring and maintaining them. There's obviously concerns about how things can be improved, shade structures, and just sort of general condition, the ability to ensure there's no drainage problems when there's thunderstorms, things of that nature. Utilization is really quite good for 2 of the fields, less so for 3 of the fields, less so for 1. The ball diamonds, maintain them, basically, but we note there with the loss of the diamond at South Mountain, monitor the use in the township to assess the need for additional facilities in the future. These facilities are not cheap, they're land extensive, so at this point it's a holding pattern for that. On soccer, the Chesterville Fairgrounds and the Mountain Park facility are where the 2 municipal facilities are. There's a reliance on the school. There's good satisfaction, and there is, utilization is not great, but that's not really the measure here. The question is whether or not there's an opportunity to do anything back at Winchester to develop a soccer pitch. I would say it's fairly low on the priority list, but that's really for council to decide because some of the other capital projects are fairly extensive as well. Outdoor rinks, we note the location, we note the value of them, and we would just suggest that there is an opportunity to maybe take one of those as a pilot and see how you can create other opportunities within the boards, improve it, and make it a municipal-wide asset. The one that you see there with the ball hockey, I think it's ball hockey, but there's pickleball lines on there. That's out in New Brunswick. And it's just a typical community center like Morewood. They've taken it and they've got a capital grant and they've made it look like this, and it works really well. So I think that would be a good, easy win, low-hanging fruit project to do. Playgrounds, the lots dotted around, good commitment to them, good distribution, no issues in any respect except obviously they are assets that age out and you need to have a plan, and anything that gets beyond 20 years of age, I think you need to make it a priority. So the best thing to do is to have a plan within your sort of 3 or 5 year capital plan or forecast to be able to go around and identify changes that need to be made, including consultation with the community, because as the equipment ages, so does the community. So it may not be that they want the same equipment to be replaced in situ. Outdoor, other outdoor facilities. Disc golf is in town, but it's not well received, put it that way, in terms of the design of it. So there is some other opportunities to change that out. There are other facilities. Pickleball is one that is obviously growing, and the way the plan is set up with those principles, I think you've got what you need to be able to make decisions about focusing on indoor use and outdoor use for pickleball going forward. Programming, just a note here that the municipality, as a rural township, has quite a advanced, it does have an advanced level of program support, which is great because it means that you're not just renters of facilities, you actually engage in direct programming. So that's something to really to latch onto and to allow it to be developed. And this is, again, one that you're going to maximize your use of the existing facilities, but to the extent that you plan for a new replacement facility, this is the kind of thing that can benefit dramatically from it. You'll see that in Embrun, almost guaranteed. When that facility is open, the program offer in that facility is going to come on significantly. And then lastly, the costs and benefits of recreation. I think a lot of this comes down to not just recognizing what's in the plan and working through some of these things, but that idea of funding the future. So the idea of building a capital reserve, getting that in the dialogue with the community at budget time, that there is an opportunity to build reserves, to do the necessary work to plan for new facilities is going to be important. And then on the operational side, to really look at your fee structure, your cost recovery, and really see what you think, where the priorities and the focus are. And that can be a separate piece of work by itself. The cost recovery at 38% is really not that bad at all. It's pretty good. But the question is never, do you want to get to 42% or 45%? The question is, where are your priorities in terms of who you subsidize versus who you do not subsidize or subsidize less? And just the last thing I'd say about having this plan, translating it into being able to be poised to take advantage of capital grants as they become available. And the one that sort of jumps to mind is, the great city of Cornwall down there in 2008, with the financial crisis that came along, the Benson Center there, which is sort of a 3-pad facility with a little 1-pad, which is designated essentially as a field house. So a 4-pad facility, a quad, $24 million at the time to build, but that was, 17 years ago. But it was a third split between the feds, province, and the municipality. So it cost them $8 million to do that. The numbers aren't the issue. The issue is being poised for any partnership dollars of real significance that come along. So what's in this document, I think, needs to be taken and translated into that assumption in the community that at some point there's going to be work towards getting a major replacement facility. I'll leave it at that, and I thank everyone for their patience and politeness.
Thank you, John. Megan, do you have anything you wanted to add before I open it up to council? Excuse me. Well, thank you very much for that presentation, John, and I'm sure it's well appreciated to have that information. There has been a lot of misinformation going around. It's hard to stem that, but your presentation, I hope those that pay attention online or that are here with us tonight understand what you're telling us is that we have good pools, we need to maintain them. We have nice arenas, we need to spend money to keep them that way for the short term or midterm. And that's something that I know my fellow council members have been trying to convey that message, but to hear it from you, hopefully that binds to some people. Many of the I could go on and on and on and talk about the things you mentioned, but I do appreciate this. There are many things in there that be future conversations had to achieve some of the things. And one of the points you spoke about was the 10 years ago, Russell Township started talking about that facility. I know I had an opportunity, no, I shouldn't say I know, I've had the opportunity to speak to the former mayor and the current mayor about that process, and it's surprising that there were many people that locally who would hear about that and think that that plan came about yesterday and the shovels are in the ground today. It's a long road to get to that point. So that was one of the many points that I wanted to latch onto, but like I said, there's many things that are important, challenges that we face. It's important that this information is brought forward for all of us to understand, because I think of the information that came forward through our transportation and our roads challenges, and that information being brought forward and understanding shared amongst the community of the challenges we face with our roads. This is akin to that. This is a challenge that we need to understand and prepare for down the road. But it was heartening to have it expressed by your presentation that the recommendation is that we focus on making sure that current facilities are maintained in a proper fashion. At this point, I'll turn it over to other members of council if they wish to comment. Councillor Urick.
Yeah, I think I'd echo your comments, Mr. Mayor. I do appreciate that. You know, the sentiment here is to maintain, but also to not, you know, get lazy, I guess, and you know, forget that we need to prepare and plan for the future. I think the biggest takeaway too, I would say, for a lot of this is that it is. I think there's a need for us to refocus our efforts when it comes to certain facilities. I think I would take the Old Town Hall, for instance, you know, and how much of an opportunity there is there with that facility to use it to much more than what it's currently being used for, and instead of it being, I guess, for lack of better phrasing, tied up by a single user group for many months of a year, when we could be opening it up to other opportunities, investigating other opportunities there. And then I think too, on the other hand, it's you know, the recognition of having to plan and appropriately maintain our facilities, especially our arenas. You know, we're obviously having conversations now when it comes to increasing user fees and stuff like that, and there's been understandable pushback, and you know, we're working on different angles and different opportunities and stuff like that. And I think it's, you know, we need to understand that from a user perspective, if we pass a motion that says we're going to increase user fees by this much, but they don't see any noticeable change in the level of service or the ice, you know, the consistency of the ice and whether it's in good and usable shape, then understandably there's going to be blowback to council and recreation, right? So I think key takeaway being that, you know, maintaining and planning is in our future, and we should really be doing that versus just trying to get by year to year when it comes to budget time.
Thank you, Councillor. Further questions, comments? Seeing none. Mr. Hack? Thank you very much for that. It's appreciated, and it's a document that we need to study and make some hard decisions on. Thank you. At this point, I know we're ready to move on to the next item. I'm just wondering, Mr. Stanley, how long do you anticipate being? Just a few moments, and then, if I may be indulged, we'll take a break after that presentation. You said, what time did you say? Mr. Stanley. This is staff report on finance from Logan Stanley, the Deputy Treasurer. Key information report on the financial analysis of ice rental rates.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. With the ice rental rates coming following my presentation here, I just wanted to provide a brief analysis of the ice rental rates, the usage of the facility at this for 2024, and a projection for the ice rental rates into 2025. So for the 2024 season, there were 2,700 hours of ice time rented. The distribution of rentals was 53% to minor sports, 33% to residents, and approximately 12% to non-residents. One of the things I wanted to highlight was the operating costs and user fee revenues in 2024, resulting in a net operating loss of $445,000. which is approximately just shy of 52% tax subsidy on the arena. As such, we did present 3 different options for user rate increases. These were the optimal rate, which brings us to a near median level with neighboring municipalities. The recommended rates, which were the rates that were brought to the March 12th meeting, with the adjustment to the non-resident prime time and non-prime time amounts. And the reduced increase is essentially a phased approach to reach those recommended levels. If we were to use these are the reduced increase rates, we would have a net operating loss based on the projected 2025 budget of $420,000. If we were to, which results in a tax subsidy of 47.7%. If we were to use the recommended rates, it would be a net operating loss of $391,000, or a tax subsidy of 44.4%. And the optimal rates would be $340,000 loss, or a tax subsidy of 38.5%. I just wanted to highlight some of the effects on the tax base for any projected increase in these user fees.
Well, thank you. That was brief, so it allows for questions, comments from council. So one of the questions I have, if you could, for my benefit, maybe others, if I look at the consolidated 47.7 on the reduced, on the mythical homeowner, is that too much to ask?
I do not have that amount.
Okay, I won't ask the question. Okay, fair enough. Questions, comments? Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So at this time, I think we need to take a 5-minute break, stretch our legs. It's some of us have been sitting for an hour, and let's return at 6:25, not 6:30. 6:25, please. And As I mentioned before we took our break, I spoke about moving fire up on the agenda. I have a motion moved by Councillor Urick, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, that the agenda be amended to move item number 7.5.A ahead of item 7.2. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Chief Raistrick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you for moving me ahead in the schedule. As you know, in 2025, council approved $50,000 from development charges reserves for the purchase of a fire chief's truck. In addition to the vehicle price increase, the cost for the required outfitting has increased significantly from the initial budget forecast. At this time, staff is researching other options for upfitting, and we do have time to find the options, to source these options, which we're looking at, but we would like to move ahead quickly with the purchase of the truck as it is available from a local North Dundas supplier.
Thank you, and my apologies. We're going to speak to budget amendment number 2025-01, new fire services vehicle, moved by Councillor Lennox, seconded by Councillor Annabelle. The council approved budget amendment number 2025-01 to increase the funds allocated to the purchase of a fire services vehicle, being a 2022 Chevrolet Silverado from RT Auto Center, Inc., and the required outfitting. Questions, comments from members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those, none, there's no one opposed. That's carried. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
We'll move back to Recreation Culture, Ms. Meerberg, adoption of ice rental rates for the 2025-2026 season, moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, second by Councillor Annabelle, that council authorize and approve the 2025/2026 ice rental rates as presented this 9th day of April 2025. Ms. Meerberg.
And was presented as the recommended rate. My report this meeting includes additional rate options for council consideration. However, I would like to ask that council provide a deferral for making a decision tonight. Members of my staff team, our local major ice user groups, and myself met last night and had a great full discussion about the need for rate increases and the impact on the end users, most notably minor sports. The group is collectively committed to finding a way to increase the ice rental rates in a manageable way and find alternate ways to reach the targeted revenues, but more time is required for us to run some numbers and evaluate some scenarios. The major ice user groups were in agreement that we could postpone setting the rates until after their AGMs, as there would still be an opportunity to set their rates before the registration opens.
Thank you for that, it's good. It's heartening to hear that there was a good discussion with the user groups, most notably minor sports, minor hockey. I think as the culture in North Dundas has long been, maybe not just North Dundas, but in smaller communities in our area, that hockey is very important. It's skills development, life skills development, development of all type. It's important that, as I was thinking about it today and having a discussion with someone, not often there's not too many places where young people have an opportunity to learn how to lose and to learn how to win, and how important that is as a life skill. It's good to hear that there was good discussion, good understanding from the user group that the challenges that the community faces, the tax base faces, and the recreation department faces in trying to maintain our facilities. Questions or comments from before I call the question? Any thoughts? Ms. Meerberg has recommended that in light of that conversation, we defer the action request until more information is available. All those in favor of a deferral? All those opposed to deferral? I guess this is my fortunate time that I get to be the tiebreaker. I'm in favor of the deferral, and I look forward to good conversation moving forward. So that'll be deferred until a later date. One might have been damaged. Well, that's my apologies for the poor sound out there. We'll move into Recreation Culture 7.2A, 7.2B, Key Information Report. Ms. Meerberg.
Sorry. The intent of this report is just to highlight some fantastic news related to the splash pad for the Brian Telford Community Park, with special thanks to members of our municipal staff team, Stephen Mann and Lisa Devereaux. To date, we have received $325,000 in grant funding for the construction of the splash pad, so we're able to move forward with that this year. The project has been awarded to ABC Recreation Limited, and the components have been ordered. The installation is planned for July, and attached to my report are the 3D renderings of the splash pad. We continue to provide updates as they're available. We continue to provide updates on the North Dundas Connect webpage, and our Hallville Community Liaison, Mary Cook, has been gracious enough to post updates on the Hallville Village social media as well for us.
Thank you for that. Questions, comments, thoughts? I'm just asking about the renderings. Is that pretty accurate, what we're going to be seeing?
Yes. Yes.
Exciting times. And I think of Mr. Hack's presentation about moving amenities, and this fits in nicely with that. Fits in nicely with the growth that's going to take place in Hallville, and is always taking place in Hallville, the growth of that community. And I want to thank Mary Cook for her involvement as the community liaison communications to make sure that message gets out to the residents of Hallville. If there's nothing further, thank you. And we're going to move to Mr. Pohl. Prepared this while he was interim CAO. It's bylaw and council remuneration. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, seconded by Councillor Lennox, that bylaw number 2025-05, being a bylaw to establish remuneration for council and appointed members, be passed and enacted this 9th day of April 2025. Mr. Pohl.
Thank you, Mayor Fraser. One of my last duties, finishing off as interim CEO. We had prepared this report beforehand. We received from the counties an annual statement of what all the municipalities earn as far as council members' remuneration. And it shows that North Dundas actually is almost at the very bottom. We're one up from South Dundas, as you can see on the chart on the screen, quite low down. What we're looking to do is move towards the average with this report to get council towards the average of what's been given as a remuneration around SDNG. As you can see on the following page, the comparison to what the current average is, the mayor is 4.1% below average. The deputy mayor position is currently 19.4% below average, and council members are 10.2% below average. On the other side of it, North Dundas actually sits as a population the third from the highest, quite substantial, and we are growing significantly, as you'll see in the chart below. Prepared by Watson and Associates, it shows our growth projections. We're the second highest in growth projections for SDNG, and some I would argue is even going to be higher. We just got another proposal for a site in the municipality right now for another 450 houses. So that'll jump from 1,812 to over 2,000. So we may be much higher than the highest one even as far as growth. And with that comes all the work that impacts council, is the public meetings that you attend for subdivisions. There's zoning amendments. There's all kinds of other subdivision agreements that come with that development approvals. that impact council and the amount of work that you have to do with that. On the next page, you'll also see that the projections from Watson and Associate with respect to our infrastructure and employment projections. We're expected to be the second highest in employment growth. We are seeing it. We have a number of industrial proposals coming forward at this time. We've got new buildings going in. One just you can see here on the south side of Gypsy Lane going in, a new industrial building. We've got one out on 31, so they're coming, and we're getting the projections from that being the second highest. Also, with regard to our housing stats, you can see our growth is quite strong. Over the last number of years, we're going at a rapid rate. We have just even 5 new subdivisions that came in the last year. We have some public meetings coming up for council, by the way. They're will be coming soon with regard to that. So what we're recommending is that council look at the average across SDNG and add 5% to account for where we sit as far as population and where we sit with growth for this coming year, the 2025 year, and average plus 5% further in the year 2026, and from then on looking just at an inflationary increase. With those 2 increases, we still won't reach North Stormont's salary for their council or their remuneration. So basically, yeah, that's where councils will be positioned. You'll be below them. They're a smaller neighbor with less development activity than we have. The second part of it is council members are not enrolled in the municipal benefit plan, but rather have an annual health spending account. That's only eligible for people up to the age of 70. Once you pass the age of 70, there's no contributions available, no pension contributions. So to address this inequity, it's recommended that there be a top-up for council members who are at the age of 71 and older to receive an equivalent amount that would be contributed by the township towards the pension plan as part of their annual remuneration.
Thank you. Questions, comments from members of council? I just want to make the comment that I know a few years ago, I talked about this with the CAO, and not so much this, Mr. Pohl, but about the idea of remuneration and not that I think that an extra, if whatever that percentage is, works out to be, dollars-wise, are going to attract people to run for the position of council, but I do think that a little bit recognition financially might cause people to give it a second thought if they're giving it a first thought. This is an effort a few years ago. It was an effort on my part to make sure it took place towards the end of this term of council, so it wouldn't be seen as something that this council was pushing for, but it was seen as ensuring that people that were thinking of vying for a position on council were able to see that financially there's some compensation that is commensurate with the effort. So I do appreciate that. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. In the key information report, Director Pohl, on building department.
Yes, I'll be presenting this with Preston Mann, or Preston, sorry.
Our Chief Building Official,
Our
Preston
Chief
Stroman.
Building Official will be presenting this.
I don't think it's on.
Okay. Can you hear me? That's good? Okay. Green button is on. Okay, good evening, Mayor, members of council. This is the annual expense report for the building department. This is required to be reported in accordance with Division C of the Ontario Building Code. Last year for 2024, we have a kind of a breakdown here. New revenue collected just under $300,000 in permits, a little bit of fines and some subcontractors' fees. And then we have a section there for transfers from unearned revenue. This is this will be kind of revenue collected based on the work that we did for those larger permits. So Wellings of Winchester, we collected the fees for that project. and in 2023, 2022, 2021. And this is work done in 2024. And then Dundas Manor was another large permit that we did all the work in 2024, about 25%, and then the rest this year and next. So in total revenue is just under 370,000. And then when we look at our expenditures, we're at just over 406. This includes three categories: direct costs, indirect expenses, salaries from other departments that are involved in building code work. This will also include general administration, insurance, building expenses, that kind of thing. You'll see there also we currently have no balance on our reserve fund, and I'll talk to that in a second. And then the amount of expenditures covered by the taxpayer was at 37,000, which actually is fairly good. Council had set a target percent cost recovery of 80%, and we hit 91 just about. So I think that's actually pretty good. I do want to recognize actually the kind of the work that was done by the previous CBO, Jacob Forget. Actually spent quite a lot of time updating the fees and kind of really set us in motion for kind of a better financial picture. So I do want to put that out there. So we're just kind of build on that. So some comments and recommendations from the chief building official. So again, like I was saying, some of the unearned revenues. So we realized about 90% of the Wellings of Winchester project. So we have about 10% left for the original permits that were collected. And so about 10,000 left that we anticipate to realize this year. And then 75% of the work of Dundas Manor will be this year and next. And I don't know how much will be realized this year, maybe another 50% and then another 25 in 2026. And I do mention that because those are quite large projects, and without the benefit of further large projects, we will see a pretty significant dip in our revenues. Without that kind of transfer for this year, you could see much higher costs coming from the taxpayer. So we are trying to kind of prepare for that. We have an automatic yearly fee increase that goes with CPI, and that happens every March 1st. And then some of the recommendations from myself. One of the things to look at is while there has been a great work put into establishing a good fee structure, I think there's an opportunity to maybe further refine that. One thing that the fees don't really account for is the complexity of the project, so there's some opportunities there to fine-tune that. What that might look like is for projects that are, for permits that are a little bit more easier, the fees might come down. Things that are more complex that take longer may cost more to reflect that complexity. We see some homes we see quite frequently. They're pretty straightforward, but the cost of them can be a lot higher than the complexity wouldn't necessarily warrant. So it's maybe having a look at that. We're exploring application fees. So one of the hiccups in our application process and slows things down is the fact that fees don't get paid until much later. So we have the opportunity to maybe take away from the overall permit structure and put that application, take a little bit, put it in the application so we can deem these complete and move forward with reviews a little easier. Some other things, discounted fees for pre-approved plans or plans accompanied by engineering. So just trying to find ways to improve efficiency in the department. We have to date, we're pretty close. We have about 8 to 10 sheds that are just about done pre-approval. So these are sheds that we've looked at, already reviewed. If somebody wants to build them, we give them the link. They go ahead and build it, and we don't really spend much except for zoning and a few other things. And we have included we've pre-reviewed, we're not quite done yet, a 2-bedroom home, and we're looking to pre-review and hopefully pre-approve 3 tiny homes in the next month. So these are things that will be available to the public. We're hoping to kind of bring it into our website. They're not plans that we have. We won't be able to provide the plans to the people, but it's just reassurance. These are things that are already approved. Here are the links, away you go. So these are things we can help speed things along. And then another, plans that are accompanied by engineering. It's always a hard thing to try and get somebody to get engineering after the fact. So we'd like to explore maybe providing discounts for people that already come with pre-engineered plans. And this mostly happens with houses where there's a little thing that happens, now you need to get an engineer, etc. And then one of the other things, the Improve Reserve Model Fund. This is something I think we need to look at to try and to push us towards setting up a reserve fund. We currently don't have anything in there. I think it's important that while we have a very good cost recovery model right now, we should be striving to get as close to 100 and beyond so that we can build up a reserve. So we'd like to look at that and kind of put something in place for that. And then kind of to complement those fee structure changes, putting a little bit of accountability on the building department, I'd like to explore kind of bringing in minimum service level standards. This may be times for reviewing plans that are faster than the provincial standards. It might be things like if somebody sends in an inquiry to the building department, they get a response within a certain period of time, and try to hold ourselves to a little bit of a standard so that if if fees are going up for some things, they should expect, I think as it was mentioned earlier, a higher level of standard service for that fee increase as well. So these are just some of the recommended changes to look at, and we'll be looking to bring something to council in a future council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Preston. Very interesting stuff, encouraging stuff, forward-thinking ideas. It's appreciated, I'm sure, by all, but open that questions, comments, members of council. Thoughts? I think we're all eager for that pre-approval of certain items. I know it's something I boast about to other communities, other mayors, that there are better ways to deal with things, future forward-thinking ways. So kudos to you, kudos to the development services for encouraging this to happen. Thank you. So we'll move on to Mr. Pohl. I believe it's Mr. Pohl, the rezoning bylaw number 2025-35, the rezoning moved by Councillor Uhrig, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bergeron. That bylaw number 2025-35 being a bylaw to rezone the property at 1715 County Road 1, new Brian Telford Community Park, from the residential first density R1 zone to the open space OS zone to reflect the current park use of the property, and rezone the property at 10519 Kerrs Ridge Road, former Hallville Recreation Center and Outdoor Rink, from the open space OS zone to the residential first density R1 zone to permit residential development on the surplus municipal property, be passed and enacted this 9th day of April 2025. Mr. Pohl.
Thank you, Mayor Fraser. So this is a follow-up to the public meeting earlier this evening, so to pass the bylaw. One important feature that wasn't mentioned is that A, being our main new park in Hallville, will be removed from the R1, and that's considered against us with regard to boundary expansions because it's considered as developable because it's zoned R1. So now that we put it in open space, we get 11 acres somewhere else in the municipality that we can use. So this is a critical rezoning to make sure that parcel helps us in other boundary adjustments.
Perfect. Questions, comments from members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Thank you, Mr. Pohl. We're going to move on to transportation. Director Cheney. Bylaw number 2025-32, Dolly Branch number 2, municipal drain, S78, request for drain major improvement and appointment of drainage engineer. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, second by Councillor Lennox, that council accept the request for drain major improvement RSO 1990 CD 17 sub 7811 to the Dolly Branch number 2 municipal drain, and that bylaw number 2025-32 being a bylaw to appoint Monica Shade of Shade Group Inc. as the drainage engineer for drain major improvement to the Dolly Branch number 2 municipal drain, be passed and enacted this 9th day of April 2025. Director Cheney.
Thank you, Mayor Fraser, members of council. So the proposed drain improvement work involves enclosing a section of the Dolly Branch number 2 municipal drain with a culvert from about 60 meters north of Dolly Drive in Winchester, northernly for approximately 59 meters. The request is for the enclosure is to make the property more useful, and a map of the area of the request is attached. A formal notice of request for drain major improvement was received from the landowner by our clerk on February 5th of this year. And then the notice of request for major drain improvement was sent to the clerk of South Nation Conservation and OMAFRA on February 18th of this year, as per section 78, subsection 2, to suffice the 30-day period for South Nation Conservation and OMAFRA to give the recommendations. As there has been no recommendations and the 30 days has passed, this is a chance to ask council to pass the bylaw.
Thank you. Questions, comments from members of council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And we'll move on to bylaw number 2025-30, sub 76, engineer's report of the bylaw and Moffat Kennedy municipal drains, including the East Justice and South Guy branches. Moved by Councillor Lennox, seconded by Councillor Annable, that bylaw number 2025-30, being a provisional bylaw to adopt Section 76 of the engineer's report of the bylaw on Moffat Kennedy municipal drains, including the East Justice and South Guy branches, be read a first and second time in open council this 9th day of April 2025. Director Cheney.
Thank you again, Mayor Fraser. So this report was presented earlier tonight by Monica Shade in her presentation. The purpose of this report is to update the assessment schedule associated with the bylaw and Moffat Kennedy municipal drains, including the East Justice and South Guy branches. The purpose of this update is to allow for fair distribution of costs associated with future maintenance works. Should council agree with the first and second reading tonight, the third reading would be followed up after the quarter revision and upon such time as which all appeals have been dealt with.
Thank you. Questions, comments from members of council? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. And now the key information report from A.L. Blair, the updated contract agreement.
So last year on April 12th, council approved and awarded the tender number TS 2024-02 to A.L. Blair Construction Limited for the 2024 supply and spread of granular M for construction and maintenance of unpaved roads. The tender included an option to renew for one additional year in 2025, which would be dependent on a fair and reasonable rate increase. At last year's tender closing, A.L. Blair did submit a unit rate for 2025 of a 5% increase over last year's prices. However, during deliberations with A.L. Blair and myself, we came to an agreement of 3.5% increase over last year's prices. Both parties have agreed, and we updated the contract, which has been attached. These granular materials are required to facilitate our 2025 maintenance and our construction projects by the township.
Thank you for that. Questions, comments? Oh, it's a key information report. My apologies. I was about to say thank you for all the good work on that, but then I got sidetracked. Thank you for your work on reducing that that percentage to 3.5. I appreciate it. And it was quite an extensive list of roads that we're going to tackle, I thought. So again, once again, you know, we're working hard to making sure that all of our roads are looked after, and I appreciate the efforts. So now we're going to move into the Lactalis request for exemption to half-load restrictions. Moved by Councillor Lennox, second by Councillor Annable. The council approve option 2 with respect to Lactalis' request for exemption to half-load restrictions on designated roads within the township of North Dundas for heavy transports and vehicles exceeding 5 tons per axle. Director Cheney.
Thank you, Mayor Fraser. This is a bit of a lengthy action request, so bear with me. So Lactalis, Canada's Winchester plant, the largest cheese-making facility in Canada, is a significant employer in the region, supporting dairy farms and contributing to the local economy, and is proud to be named on Forbes' Canada's Best Employers for 2025. Lactalis Canada has been recognized amongst the country's top 300 employers, making the list as the only dairy company and amongst the top 10 in food and beverage category in 2025. On February 15th of last year, Lactalis made an inquiry to staff on how to obtain a half-load exemption so they may ship their product on fully loaded trucks across the township's roads during half-load season on Liscombe Road. Staff sent Lactalis our policy number 99-2024 which is called the Seasonal Load Restriction Exemption Permit, that outlines what would be required for the next steps. Listed below are the next steps that are part of that policy. So on April 29th of 2024, Lactalis contracted Goodman Pavement and Materials Engineering Incorporated, which is one of the parts of the policy that have been outlined, that they require a engineering firm to do boreholes and to come back with a an engineering plan that will tell us at the township that, you know, we recommend this, this, and this, and then we can go from there. So they, sorry about that. As attached, Goodman Pavement and Materials, Inc. provided their final report to Lactalis on July 19th of last year. However, the township just received the report on March 13th of this year, hence the lateness of bringing it to council. The recommendation provided in this report will be used for the detailed design of the proposed locations. And there's two locations that they did identify. Basically, Liscombe Road from County Road 31 to approximately 155 meters west of the entrance of Lactalis plant, which is approximately 1.595 kilometers. And section 2 is a 155 meter section that's right in front of the entrance of Lactalis that Lactalis paved under their own, they paid for it themselves a few years ago and paved a section there that's 155 meters long. So they broke it up into two different sections. Listed as a scope of work, just a basic outline of where the boreholes were done, and in the report that's attached here, you can read through. It's some good nighttime reading on what they found and what levels of ground and the ground water that was coming in. So out of all of this, option 2, should council agree to that, North Dundas can enter into an agreement and issue a permit to Lactalis's haulers that would legitimize their continual use of roads needed to access their facility. Via the permitting process, the township could reasonably charge a fee that is intended to recover some road maintenance costs that are being incurred as a result of the accelerated deterioration of the road. Based on a financial review, the 2020 average daily traffic count of 438 vehicles, with the majority of those vehicles being heavy trucks. The amount of the annual contribution to the township is suggested at $50,000 per year for each year of the agreement. This value would give township staff the financial capacity to either repair damage that occurs, add additional granulars to shoulders to improve the road strength by adding more asphalt in select areas, or perform other road maintenance activities, example ditching, to improve the overall carrying capacity of the road during the half-load season. If council deems this option their preferred approach, staff would report back to council in the fall of 2027 with the findings of any road damage during the past 3 years and request council's direction on moving forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cheney, Director Cheney. I know a few years ago, we entered into an agreement with Savita to offset some of the challenges that our municipal road faced on Sandy Row, and this is akin to that. Questions, comments from members of council? Deputy Mayor.
Oh, Jamie, at the beginning, I know you said lots of really nice things about Lactalis, but I'd also like to remind the people that the Lactalis's water use has cost the taxpayers of this community millions of dollars in lost tax revenue, plus in millions in looking for new water. And so whatever damage I think that they do to the road, that they should be paying at least that minimum of $50,000.
Thank you for your comment. Further questions, comments? All those in favor of, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Good. Yeah, so I do believe, to your point, Deputy Mayor, that it is $50,000, Director Cheney?
Correct.
Yes, so is that, I think that was your question or your hope? Yes. All those in favor of the the action request? All those opposed? I'm sorry, did I count your hand? Okay. All those in favor? All those opposed? Seeing none opposed, that's carried. Thank you. We're going to move on to Environmental Services Director Ward and your key information report on the draft solid waste bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. So in front of you this evening is a report about the draft solid waste bylaw. So there actually was never a solid waste bylaw in place previous to this. It was just a one-page policy. So as Council knows, as we continue to work towards expanding our landfill, that comes with a few more requirements from the Ministry of Environment, which includes a little bit more control about what can and can't happen at the landfill. And the way staff feel that this would be reflected best is if it was in a bylaw that was enforceable. So this bylaw is new, and that it is just being presented to you as key information tonight. You can provide feedback tonight or at a later time, and then in May it will come back to you as an actual bylaw that we'd like to enact. Some of the key items that might be of interest to Council is in Section 6, we are looking to increase the level of service at no additional cost to the taxpayer. So this is important to note. We already collect garbage, and as Council's aware, we no longer collect recycling. So we have dual rear pack collection units on the road. So extending the level of service to now collect leaf and yard waste instead of recycling is something that we would like to offer to the public. Previously, we only offered 1 week in the spring and 1 week in the fall. This would be a weekly service starting the third week in May and then extending into November. So an additional level of service, and then the same with Christmas tree collection. We haven't been doing that in the past, but we could offer that service should Council be okay with that. Another few items here is the operations of the landfill are going to change significantly, and this is important to bring to Council's attention because in previous years, the waste inspected at the landfill has not always been completed, and that's just the way operations have been. However, with the new ECA that we have now obtained from the ministry, all loads that are coming inbound to the landfill must come to a complete stop at the entrance, be inspected, be recorded, and then they'll be permitted to dump. The reason for that is because we now have to record every single type of waste coming into the landfill, and that will be part of our annual reporting required for the ministry. So some of those things are new, and our residents will also be experiencing those changes this coming year. We do anticipate to obviously communicate that with the residents prior to enacting that, so there will be increased signage and, of course, some communications on that. Other than that, everything is contained within the report. We are not changing any curbside collection service levels at this time. We are not looking at changing anything that we currently do. So if Council has any questions, concerns, I can address them now or at a later time.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that short key information report. I'm just making the Deputy Mayor twitch. Questions, comments from Council? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. When we were talking previously, or somewhere in here in these 438 pages, I remember something about you saying the vehicles showing up in the landfill site, which they shouldn't be. And I had asked you, is that you notice that they put it in their garbage, or is that just people dumping it at the site? And somewhere else you mentioned there's a possibility that you will get a big bloop in, so that if someone's recyclable is not picked up, that they could actually bring it to the landfill site to put into that bin.
Yeah, so that's correct. So we are experiencing kind of a, I don't want to call it, it's a bit of a service level change compared to what we used to offer. So now a lot of residents aren't receiving the same level of service that they have been. So they've been bringing a lot of their recycling, if it doesn't get picked up, to the landfill, which we then have to landfill until this bylaw gets enacted, because it does actually prohibit the disposal of recyclables. But to your point, yes, we will be coming back in May to Council with an agreement from a recycling company that has reached out to us. So Circular Materials Ontario has to meet a specific target percentage in each collection area, and they're currently, based on the feedback I've been receiving, looking to increase the amount that they are getting. So they are, the level of recycling they're collecting at the curbside isn't reflective of what they have to. So they are reaching out to us, asking us if we would like to be a depot to receive those recyclables, and then they would manage that. So it would be at no cost to the taxpayer to offer that service. Previously, we had gotten out of that service, and just for council and the taxpayer to understand this better, is we had gotten out of that service because it would cost the tax base money to then offer that service. So now we are going back in because now the deal is for free. So it's a bit of a back and forth, but we're excited to bring it back. I do think it increases the level of service we offer the community, and it's even better that it's at no cost. So,
Please go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
I'm just trying to make sense of the government's common sense in that, well, we know there's none, okay. In that they're not picking up at commercial sites, and yet they're not picking up enough. So now we have to put a bin in our landfill site so that they can collect enough. So, I mean, wouldn't it really make more sense if they just picked up everybody's recycling? Just my comment.
And thank you for your comment. It leads me into a response to that comment. I was at Ontario Good Roads. There was a delegation, the lead of our Regional Waste Management Working Group, Sarah McDonald, and North Glengarry, asked for a delegation about the blue box, about the commercial, and to be supportive of the minister. He was quite enthused. All reports were he was quite enthused to have North Glengarry and Sarah present some ideas on how to best manage the commercial pickup that they're having struggles with, and the minister in his own writing was challenged by the commercial pickup or the lack of. And so the feedback I got from the folks that attended the delegation was that they were quite happy. The minister was quite happy to be presented with some ideas on how to best manage the recycling. Bite your tongues.
Years ago, we sat at Rome, and I think a lot of us provided ideas, and the then minister said, "Oh, no, it's fine." So
Good, we know what we're doing. But questions, comments about section 6 you referred to. The question that I want to ask is the Christmas trees. Would that be an issue, the size of the tree getting into the recycle side? Because I think of years ago, whenever someone wanted curbside yard waste, it had to be like 4-foot lengths in a bundle. So I'm just wondering if that is going to be a challenge with Christmas trees, or will that side, either side, manage that?
So Christmas trees will always be a challenge, just because of the size. So there are size limits and weight limits in this bylaw that do restrict like what we will collect at the curbside. However, the amount of Christmas trees that we have seen out in the past has been very minimal. So we're hoping that it's not a big task to undertake, and hopefully people follow the bylaw. Again, that communication piece will be key before that happens. Residents are more than welcome to bring them to our landfill site, of course, and we manage them there, no charge. So if they have a Christmas tree that's oversized or overweight, I'm not sure how heavy Christmas trees could be, but perhaps they get overweight, but they could be brought to the site, and we would manage them there for free. So we'll be sure to communicate that around the Christmas time period so that residents are aware of that.
Thank you. And another thought when I was going through the package the other day was the 60/40 split truck. Are we going to continue purchasing 60/40s, or is that box just go onto a new cab chassis?
No, so the new truck that we did price out this year, actually we won't, and that's a different discussion with council, but the 60/40 was not what we were looking. We were just looking at a straight 100% rear compact unit. Currently, based on the ongoing tariffs, the garbage truck, so if council wishes to revise this decision and go back to 60/40 to do leaf and yard waste, we can, because currently the tariffs have created a bit of a price discrepancy in what was budgeted and what is actually obtainable this year. So we haven't selected or pre-committed any money towards that truck. So if you would like to revisit that discussion, I can bring that back in May when I bring this bylaw back, if you'd like.
I think that would depend on council's desire to have leaf and yard waste picked up on a regular basis. That's,
We could also discuss it at budget once we go through a leaf and yard waste season, if you would prefer at that time.
yes,
Okay.
that sounds like a great idea. Thank you. Any other questions about the draft solid waste bylaw? See none. We'll move into environmental 2025-02 Winchester Wellfield number 7 upgrades and Wellfield number 8 construction. Moved by Councillor Lennox, seconded by Councillor Urick. The council approves the award of tender number ENV 2025-02 to Louis W. Bray Construction Limited in the amount of $3,973,460.00 plus HST. The council approves the award of contract administration to J.L. Richards in the amount of $312,395. And that bylaw number 2025-29 being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with Louis W. Bray Construction for Winchester Wellfield number 7 upgrades and Wellfield number 8 construction be passed and enacted this 9th day of April 2025. Director Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a continuation of the discussion we continue to have about Wellfield 7 and Wellfield 8. So this is the tender that awards that work. So Wellfield 7 is getting some upgrades to some pumps as well as electrical. And then Wellfield 8, which council's well aware, is the new well that we have. There's 2 actually. There's well 8A and B. Those have been drilled, and this is the well house and the pumps that will be a part of that new well field. The estimated date of completion is December 31st of this year, so that's very positive. We hope to have those additional units online at that time. One thing council will note is this did come in over budget, $583,460, so that's about a 17% increase over OPCA. We are working right now with the contractor that we're looking to award with on reducing that cost. We've come up with some cost-saving ideas. Also, we've been in talks with Hydro, actually just today, and the cost for Hydro may be lesser than what we originally budgeted for. And it should be noted that as part of that 583, there's a $300,000 contingency, which we hope not to use. So we're hoping that we will come in around budget. Another note is that this is funded through ICIP funding, so they are funding 73% of this project, and the remainder will be long-term debt financing. So if there's any questions, I can answer them.
Questions, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, seeing none, that's carried. The North Dundas Drinking Water System Annual Report, moved by Councillor Lennox, seconded by Councillor Annabelle, that council receive and accept the North Dundas Drinking Water System Report for the period of January 1 to December 31st, 2024. Director Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is an annual administrative item that we bring to council every spring. So this is just looking for your approval, since we are the owners of the drinking water system, that you are aware of what is going on within the drinking water system and you accept the report as brought tonight. I can answer any questions you may have. There isn't anything of particular note in this report, no adverse quality, and no inspection deficiencies that are that we haven't repaired already.
Thank you. Questions, comments for the director? Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just make my questions really short. I just noticed that well number 5, the salt was 144, which is extremely high, above the 20 that is required. And so I just wondered what well that was and what you think the cause is.
Yeah, so thank you, through you, Mayor. The well 5 is actually along County Road 31. So I'm not sure if council knows this, but there's been some reporting around the province about groundwater increasing chloride concentrations because of the application of road salt, which is why it will come back to council eventually. But South Nation Conservation is updating its vulnerability scoring to include salt concentration application on highways and roads, looking at reducing that amount that's applied. So in essence, to your question, Deputy Mayor, the idea is that Wellfield 5 is most likely directly impacted by County Road 31 and the application of salt. So at this point, there's not much we can do other than look towards SNC and work with them to reduce the amount of salt application. But of course, there's also the manner of health and safety with driving. So if we could build all wells away from the road, that would be more ideal. But unfortunately, these ones, we have quite a few in Winchester that are close to roads, so we do see high concentrations of salt.
Thank you for the question, and which I want to comment. Wellfield 5, and when we say it's along Highway 31, that's just north of the Country Kitchen Restaurant,
That's correct.
for those that were wondering. All those in favor? Opposed? No, this is the Drinking Water System Annual Report. In favor? Okay, opposed, seeing none, that's carried. And the surplus landfill buildings at 12620 Boyne Road and 10891 Cameron Road, moved by Councillor Lennox, second by Councillor Urick, that council declare the cover-all building measuring 30 feet by 50 feet at 12620 Boyne Road to be surplus to the needs of the township, and that council declare that the landfill attendant building measuring 150 square feet at 10891 Cameron Road to be surplus to the needs of the township. Director Ward.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is my final report. So I am looking to declare 2 buildings surplus to the landfill and the Environmental Services Department. So the first is the cover-all, which I like to refer to as the cover-half, simply because it's just in a state of disrepair. It is past its asset replacement, like the life of it has been exceeded by, I believe, 10 or 15 years. So as you can see in the picture that's on the screen now, there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done also structurally. The other problem with this structure is it's directly in the way of the next cell that we are currently putting waste in. So as you can imagine, this building is a little bit sunken, whereas the waste is up higher. So when the waste goes in, if there's a rainstorm or something like that, all of the water from the garbage is going to sit in this facility, which we obviously don't want. So by removing this and declaring it surplus, we'll find someone that may have a better use for it than us, or that will scrap metal it. Those are the 2 options we're looking at. And then the other building is the building that maybe some people have visited, the Mountain Landfill in past lives. This is a closed landfill site, and as part of the closure plan, we're not actually supposed to have any landfill buildings on this facility anymore. It's supposed to just be open space. So we just need to remove this building. It is also past its expected life. So again, it will be taken apart by staff. There will be no cost to tax base, taken apart, and whatever parts can be salvaged, we will, and then the rest will just be disposed of or recycled appropriately.
Any further questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. We're going to move into the consent agenda, moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, second by Councillor Urick, that all items listed under the consent agenda be approved / filed as recommended. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. No items for consideration, no notices of motions, boards and committees, county council. Deputy Mayor? County Council? County Council. I don't think you were there.
I was away in Machu Picchu at that time.
Comment. Councillor Annable, do you have any comments from the County Council meeting you attended? Please.
Well, I enjoy it. It's a different level of what goes on here. But the only thing, when you only go once in a while, there's obviously some discussions of some issues before you get there, so you don't always comprehend where the flow is. So that's my only comment, but I enjoy it.
That's good. Because I'm having a tough time remembering. That was so long ago. So thank you for that. So Parade of Lights, they had a meeting recently. I was not able to attend. Garden Party Market, another meeting was held, but the minutes are captured. Art in the Waterfront, Councillor Annable. We had a report tonight, so we're good.
She nailed it.
Chesterfield District Historical Society, Councillor Annable, anything to update us on?
Not really. They spend one day a week or one afternoon a week cataloging what they've got. They're continually taking stuff in. How they ever get everything in that building is beyond me.
The Carnival, Councillor Urick, Green Action Gang.
Green Action Gang is doing well. I suppose I haven't heard from them in a while. But they're the best Green Action Gang out there. Just one comment, and maybe somebody can fill me in after the meeting. The planters in front of Scotiabank, the brick planters by the sidewalk, I saw damage to the corner of one with several bricks on the ground. I don't know if those are township owned or private property, but I do know the Green Gang does plant in those, so might want to follow up.
Just a follow-up to that, that's been an item that's been raised before, is people cut that corner short sometimes. And I know, I look at the back, and I do believe our facilities manager one day did some work, just made sure that they were put together, I think it was before Art in the Waterfront last year. You made sure that that was neatened up and straightened up, and again, I'm guessing someone's bumped into it again. I think there's a bit of discussion back and forth between the Rotary Club and us and Green Action Gang, who's going to take the challenge up, but I think we need to have a better conversation than that. The Downtown Dairy Fest, Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, I've been in the car with you when you drive. Are you the one who cut the corner short?
I didn't bump into anything.
Okay, Dairy Fest, yes, we finally had a meeting. Friday night is going to be rollerblading. Oh, it's only going to be a one-day event this year. Same reason as Art on the Waterfront, hard to get volunteers. But the rollerblading will be Friday evening. The actual Dairy Fest will be on the Saturday. The fireman's breakfast starts at 7 a.m., but guess what? The bar opens at 8 a.m., which means you can have a Spanish coffee with your egg in the morning if you would like. At 9 a.m., the pavilion will be open with the mini maestros. Amy teaches music to infants and toddlers, so that's something interesting. There will be the car show, the antique car show, and depending on what the other items cost for the day, we may be getting the stingrays, but it depends on the finances that we have for the other items that will happen through the day. There'll be face painting, food. Country Kitchen will be providing food this time. The ball tournament, though, is lasting 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There's 14 to 16 teams, and there's no rain date, so if it rains, a lot of the activities will be inside the arena.
Thank you for that update. And the Morwood Rec Association.
So Easter's around the corner, and unfortunately my laptop took a nosedive during the council meeting, hence all the paper over here. So here's my plug. Go on Facebook, check out the Morwood Recreation Association to get a full schedule of the fun events this Easter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Now we're going to move into council comments. I do want to extend congratulations to the, and maybe I'm going to really go outside of my comfort zone. I'm going to ask Peter Guy, if you can make some comments about the OSGA, Janet Levere. I've seen your picture and the success of the curling championships that were early March. Can you come up, please? I want everyone to hear this. Thank you. I think it's good stuff.
That was Janet Levere that organized that. Ontario Senior Games, 55 to 65, which I competed in. Then there was 65 and up. And the event was held at the Winchester Curling Club. And my team consisted of Deanna Corbett-White, my wife, Phil Gasser, and myself, and it was just threw together at the last minute. And the other team was Bill Huggabone, Abe Duma, Janet Duma, and Janet Lapierre. So we both ended up winning he won the 65 and over, and our team won the 55 and over, so now we compete in Huntsville next February.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Maybe I should ask for $5,000 for the weekend, should I? Or?
And on the vein of congratulations, or in that vein, I just want to extend congratulations to the North Dundas Senior Rockets for winning the EOSHL Championship. They won the game Sunday, Sunday late afternoon, evening. They beat the St. Smith Falls Ritos to win the championship, which would be the third championship in the last 4 years for the North Dundas Senior Rockets. So a lot of notoriety for sports teams in North Dundas, and all the best as the OSGA move forward. And that group, Peter, your territory is SDG, Prescott, Russell, and Akwesasne. It's quite a large group that quite a large area that your group covers. So kudos to the Winchester Curling Club. And at this point, we're going to move into closed session. Pursuant to Section 2392 of the Municipal Act 2001, subsection C, acquisition or disposition of land, the sale of 10219 Currs Ridge Road, Hallville. The second item, subsection C, acquisition or disposition of land, intended municipal land purchase. And number 3, subsection D, labor relations or employee negotiations. Moved by Councillor Annable, second by Councillor Lennox. The council proceed to closed session at 7:28 p.m. pursuant to Section 2392 of the Municipal Act 2001, subsection C, acquisition or disposition of land, and subsection D, labor relations or employee negotiations. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. That's right, Ty. Moved by Deputy, coming to open session, moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, second by Councilor Annabelle, that council return to open session at 8:07 PM. All those in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Moved by Councilor Lennox, second by Councilor Urick, that Director of Recreation and Culture proceed with option 1 as directed in closed session. All those in favor? Opposed? In favor?
Yes.
Okay. Opposed? Seeing none, that's carried. Moved by Councilor Annabelle, second by Councilor Urick, that the Director of Environmental Services proceed as directed in closed session. Closed session, all those in favor? Opposed, seeing none, that's carried. And moved by Councilor Lennox, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, that the CAO and Assistant Administrator slash Human Resource, that the CAO and Assistant Administrator slash Human Resource Coordinator proceed as directed in closed session. All those in favor? Opposed, seeing none, that's carried. And adjournment, moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, seconded by Councilor Lennox, that council adjourn at 8:08 PM to the call of the chair. All those in favor? Opposed, seeing none, that's carried. And to all of those that said it'd be a long meeting, you're wrong. That was quick. Could have been. Yes, thank you. There's a friendly amendment to move the words that were captured in the original request. We removed the option and just said proceed as directed in closed session. And that was agreed upon by the mover and seconder. Did I not close the meeting already? Yeah, moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, second by Councilor Lennox, that council adjourned at 8:08 PM to the call of the chair. All those in favor? I'll do it again.
Now, with him leaving before or after close, can he still move still and second it, especially from close?
It wasn't from closed, it was being open, so that is an issue.
Well, I can revisit that then quickly. Yes, let's make sure there's no hiccups. So moved by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, second by Councilor Annabelle, we did that. Moved by Councilor Lennox, seconded by Deputy Mayor Bergeron, that the Director of Recreation and Culture proceed with option 1 as directed in closed session. All those in favor? Opposed, seeing none, that's carried. Move. That'd be the second one. There's the open session, and then the next one, that's Recreation and Culture. Yeah, but the next one is Lennox and Urick, which is Lennox and Deputy Mayor.
So what we have to do is, I'll just put that the seconder was amended, okay? Councilor Lennox, Deputy Mayor, gotcha. Okay.
The third one is Annabelle and Lennox. Moved by Councilor Annabelle, second by Councilor Lennox, that Director of Environmental Services proceed as directed in closed session. All those in favor? And the last one, we don't need to do, and the adjournment, we don't need to do.
Okay, and I'll advise you.
Thank you, John. Do you want to screw all that up?